Behind every crime lies a story waiting to be uncovered, from chilling mysteries to untold truth. This is where the darkness comes to light.
Courtroom buzz lights up the air, faces tense as stories tear, truth and lies like a tango dance. Justice here takes no chance. Gavel strikes, hearts beat fast. Witness takes stand, shadows cast. Whispers loud like wildfire spread. In this game, none's ahead.
Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. If you are watching in this on replay, hello. Good to see you there. So we are I've gone live early, and I apologize. I did try to text as many people as I possibly could, and I will hang out a little bit before people can probably wake up and get it here. But I decided to get in on early because um I wanted to catch up on this trial. So because we've been doing Lori Vallow case, right? Um, we ah, it's just we need to catch up on this trial and to get a move on and absolutely get it done and kind of still be somewhat on live with it. So there is not much that we need catch up from yesterday. So and we can speed up breaks, we can speed up things, we can just get a move on and watch on like 1.5 or something, so we can watch a little bit faster. I do understand it is a little bit early for everybody. I know people are probably gonna be um not happy, but to be fair, if you have watched Kathy's video already for the day, you already gonna have like a good perception on how that trial went yesterday, because her videos are always so great. Oh yeah, I did text Paula. I actually did text. Oh, what is this? Oh, I did text people, and I put on Discord, and I've sent emails, and I put on the mod chat. No, I'm joking, but it's fine. It's all right. I'm like, I understand if people are not here on time. It is absolutely fine. Before we do go ahead with trial and get a move on and get the day started, I am gonna have to apologize to you all. Today it's gonna be a day where I am not gonna have the camera on. I am absolutely exhausted and tired. It's been a very long, hard week. Even though it's only Wednesday. Happy Hump Day. Um, Paula, are you working again? You should know better. Go. No, I'm joking. But yeah, so I'm just a little bit tired, and I am just chilling in the background, still listening to court, talking to you guys in chat and interact and everything. But I look like a dead zombie. Zombies already look bad, but I look like an unalived zombie, which is even worse. But fear not, I am off now until next Tuesday. So today, after Lori Vallow, instead of going to work, I am going to bed, which is awesome, and I am looking forward to that. But like I said, we came on earlier to start court, and that's what we're gonna do. Where we left off yesterday, before we had to break up for the day, was that, if correct me if I was wrong, but this is what I remember. I should have gone back and actually listened to it. We left off was the prosecution gonna do their motions for the JOA, wasn't it? I don't know. I think that's where we left off. I am not sure. I think that's because we left. No, hang on. No, because we did that hour and a half during Laurie's trial, and that confused me. So, good morning, Maria. Hello, good morning, my friend. Welcome in. How are you today? Um, so Paula, please correct me if I'm wrong, if that's where we left off or not, if you remember. Because I am assuming, because we did that hour and a half of court during Laurie's trial, and I got confused, and brain has been sleep deprived for so long that my brain doesn't even know his own name right about now. But I think that is where we left off. If it isn't, please correct me and we can jump on to it. But I just want to get a head start and start the day. I'm gonna put for now. I'm gonna put on 1.3 because I think that seems. But if we see that they still speak slow, we're gonna put up, because obviously we've been struggling, especially with the defense attorney. Not Wolfgang, the other attorney. I don't know his name. Especially with that one, he speaks rather slow, and I feel that this is they speak slower than normal. At least they speak slower than I do, so that would not be surprised. So we're gonna start court. I will be quiet and enjoy court, and I'll be in chat, interacting and chatting up with you guys.
So counsel said these are based on allegations of only 2 individuals in the home and 1 survived. Your Honor, there has been testimony of several other things other than that. We've had an expert, someone declared by this court as an expert in fire investigations, that went through and found the area of origin. He went through this process. He described the scientific method. He talked about the several different hypotheses and why they were not then consistent with what they were finding with the physical evidence. He looked and ruled out the electrical. He looked and ruled out the mechanical. He looked and ruled out the chimney. This court saw the pictures of the timbers above the chimney. This court saw the walls in place, which were part of his reasoning for the electrical. This court heard what he stated was the area of origin and why that would not be consistent with the mechanical room, which is where the furnace. This court heard all that testimony. This court also heard that it was an intentionally set fire based on his expert opinion. Some of those things were directly because the defendant herself described an accelerant trail. The defendant herself described where she saw the fire when she came up, which then matched his area of origin. The defendant went and bought gas that morning, Your Honor. We've had testimony that she purchased it and you had gas, and that Cynthia DeLoach saw the hose going into the back hatch of the Blazer. That was not where the gas tank was. Then we have the gasoline found, tested and found on the victim's underwear, his left sock, his right sock, and his sweatpants. You've also heard then testimony, Your Honor, of how the defendant sent the boys away that day, woke them up. 2 of the boys stated they didn't want to go. She sent them away. Those all then are circumstantial evidence that this court can consider for the act of arson, and that the defendant herself is the one that set the fire, planned for the fire, intended to burn the residence down, in which the residence was burnt down. I didn't hear counsel address the premeditated murder, but I'd like to address that as well. There are many, many acts that show premeditation, some of which I've already talked about. The gas on the sweatpants, the buying of the gas in the morning, sending the boys away. Those are all for this court to consider in terms of premeditation. But additionally, I'd like this court to also consider the additional premeditation, that when the arson is foiled and that when the victim races out of the home on fire, screaming, trying to rip his clothing off, Your Honor, I also want this court to consider the premeditation of getting into the van, describing, saying she sees him in the side yard, and the neighbors then seeing her in the driveway. And as soon as she sees these neighbors that she's so intent on trying to get help from, that as soon as they're coming down the driveway, she makes an immediate turn into the side yard and goes to the backyard. And it just so happens that right where she runs her tracks is right where the victim's located. Pool of blood on the ground. There's premeditation to get into that van after she says that she sees him in the yard. There's premeditation to drive to the side yard and all the way into the backyard on a rainy, muddy January day with no reason to go in the backyard. But then again, Your Honor, I want you to also consider the additional premeditation. He survives the fire. He survives getting out of the house. And then what does she do? All of the neighbors account that she threw her body on top of a burned human being. So badly burned, she herself describes him as pink melt, laboring to breathe, struggling to breathe. And what does she do? She throws her body on him to help him breathe. The court has heard testimony of that. The court has transcripts of that. She had to be pulled up twice, Your Honor. I asked this court to not only deny the directed verdict on all of these counts with the evidence that's been presented. We think that there's more than enough evidence to show that Linda Stermer thought about this fire, intentionally set this fire, and as well as trying to then catch Todd in that fire and kill him, and then even more premeditation then of trying to kill him even after those plans did not go the way she had expected. We find that in the light most favorable to the prosecution, that all the evidence has been presented for this court then to allow the jury to make the decision, and we ask the motion to be denied.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Anything else, Mr. Keller?
Thank you, shut the clock.
You may.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, that would be fine if we were in Magic Land. This is not about magic. This is about what was the actual findings and who did what. There has not been any evidence that's been brought before this court that showed that Linda Stermer put her hands in any motion that created a arson, that created a fire, that put somebody else's life in danger. Her life, his life. There was no evidence that stated and showed from the testimony that whatever the experts say that his hypothesis, he never said that the only thing that we have left is Linda Stermer caused the fire by doing X, Y, Z. That's not the evidence. And so this whole issue about why she reacted the way she did for trying to lay on top of her husband, that's not the cause of the fire. The cause of the fire has to be based upon an act, and they have never showed any evidence that she acted in a way that caused the fire. To say that someone purchased some gasoline is almost like saying that everybody that goes to a gasoline station and happened to go home with an unfortunate issue in reference to a fire, then they are an arsonist because they purchased some gasoline. And that issue itself has been suspect in reference to prior testimony that the individuals say that she saw her at a service station, making some purchases of some items and putting some gasoline in her car. And Judge, I still say that there is nothing, even if you stretched it to imagination, that establishes a connection and a nexus between Linda Stermer and the cause of the fire. Thank you.
Thank you. Defense brings this motion for directed verdict under Rule 6.419, which states that after the prosecution has rested its case in chief or the close of all the evidence, the court on defendant's motion must direct a verdict of acquittal on any charged offense for which the evidence is insufficient to sustain a conviction. I must state my reasons for my decision on the record. I am to grant a motion only if, after considering all of the evidence in the light most favorable to the prosecution, I conclude that no rational trier of fact could find that the essential elements of the crimes charged were proven beyond a reasonable doubt. In this case, I can reach no such conclusion, and the prosecution's case in chief survives the motion for directed verdict brought by the defense. A reasonable jury may conclude that, although circumstantial, the evidence is powerful. For each count, the prosecution must demonstrate that Ms. Stermer caused the death of Todd Joseph Stermer. For count one, the prosecution must also show that she intended to do so. Although count two offers 3 states of mind, I'll just address the intent to kill, as that's the standard for count one and the highest burden for the prosecution. On count one, then, the prosecutor must prove that the killing was premeditated, in other words, thought out beforehand, and that it was deliberate, meaning she considered the pros and cons of the killing and thought about and chose her actions before she did it. On the second count, the prosecution does not have to prove premeditation and deliberation, but instead must prove that when Ms. Stermer did the act that caused the death of Todd Stermer, that she was committing the crime of arson. For arson, the prosecution must prove that defendant burned a building, that the building was a dwelling house, and that she intended to burn the dwelling or its contents, or intentionally committed an act that created a very high risk of burning the dwelling or contents, and that while committing the act, she knew of that risk and disregarded it. I'm going off of my notes from trial, so I may not be bringing up everything, but the prosecution has presented evidence that defendant was married to Todd Stermer and living in the home with him and their children. She was having an affair and lying to cover it up, even recruiting others to help her. The night before the fire, she and Todd had what has been described as their worst fight, apparently over money issues and infidelities. The morning of the fire, she directed all of her sons to leave the house. She gave them money and advised that they go to the mall, to lunch, to a movie, activities that would keep them out of the house for a while and arguably safe from a fire. This was the day she and Todd were to talk or argue about the details of the divorce, according to Ms. Stermer. In what has been described by witnesses, the sons in particular, as highly unusual and not part of the family's habit and routine, she did not allow the sons to communicate with their father, whose demonstrated by testimony that he was sleeping in a chair or on a couch in the living room. These actions, it could be believed, demonstrate not only intent, but planning, deliberation, and premeditation. After the boys left, the evidence demonstrates that Todd had gasoline on the clothing he still had on, and the house was ablaze with fire. The evidence, mostly from Ms. Stermer's own statements, is that Ms. Stermer, rather than tend to her husband on fire, took the van to attempt to leave the scene and get help. There's been testimony that she had 2 cell phones at the time. In the process of doing that, she ran over her husband as he ran outside in flames. Blood on the van demonstrates this, and it's uncontested that she ran her husband over with the van. Ms. Stermer's statements were that it was an accident, but a rational juror could find that to be non-credible and instead believe that after causing a fire, she ran him over. There's testimony, too, as noted by the prosecution, that she was covering him. Could be a loving wife trying to save her husband, or a wife trying to make sure her act of arson ultimately caused his death. There's evidence presented that he died of smoke inhalation. Several witnesses testified to Ms. Stermer's various versions of events, which could bolster the prosecution's theories on count 1 and 2. There's testimony from a boyfriend confirming that she had an affair, which could pose a possible motive for her actions. Friends testified that after the fire, she was looking for a cup out of a dishwasher, presumably because it contained some type of evidence of a crime, such as a tranquilizer. A witness testified to photos of the sons in a shed, not necessarily known for housing such things. One could infer she wanted to save those from the fire. A gas station attendant said she was getting gas that morning and putting it in the back of her car, which it would imply it was being put into a gas can. A gas container was found out in the front of their yard. A Dardita Gordon testimony was read into the record, which basically supports the prosecution's theories of the case. For all those reasons noted, I do find that there was sufficient support for the prosecution to survive this motion, so it will be denied. Counsel, anything else before I bring in the jury?
I don't think, Your Honor. Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Kelly or Mr. Mueller? Okay, bring in the jury.
Love that we can skip these little parts now. Wee.
Ciderbean?
Thank you, Your Honor. People have no further witnesses and
Morning, sir.
Thank you. The people have rested. Mr. Mueller, did you care to call any witnesses in this
Yes, we do,
case?
Your Honor. I'm going to have Len McHugh come to the witness stand.
Okay.
And if we can go get him real quick.
Okay.
One second.
Sir, you can come on up here. If you raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. Please have a seat. And once you're settled in, we'll have you give us your full name and spell your last, please. Okay, yeah,
I'm Len McHugh, last name MC, capital H-U-G-H.
thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, sir. Can you tell us, back in January of '07, what were you doing for a living?
Insurance adjuster, independent insurance adjuster.
What does that involve?
I'm licensed through the state of Michigan, and I get hired by various insurance carriers to do claims for them.
Do you have a specialty in terms of claims?
I'm licensed for property and liability, casualty, and work comp, but I do mostly property.
Back in January of 2007, were you doing property in connection with this fire at the Stermer residence?
Yes, I was.
Can you explain to us, first of all, how did you get notice there's a fire and then you're going to do some adjusting?
So how we got notified of it, Farm Bureau Insurance had hired our company to start the fire assignment. It was supposed to be basically a limited assignment because the large loss adjuster for Farm Bureau was going to eventually take it over, and he didn't. So they assigned it to our company, and then I was the adjuster that was assigned by J&S Claim Service, my employer at the time.
If the fire was January 7, 2007, about what day did you first actively get involved?
I think it was January 9th is when we received it.
Did you make contact with Linda Stermer?
Yes.
What was the purpose of that?
To set up a time to go out and take photographs and start the claim process.
Tell us, if you would, the claim process. What are you doing when you're talking about going and taking photographs?
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go there and determine the cost to rebuild the house, and we usually do the personal property as well. And I go out and I interview the the person that I go to and take a recorded statement, usually get a consent form from them.
That would be the owner of the house?
Yes.
You call that the insured?
Yes, we call them the insured.
Okay. So in this particular case, you're representing the homeowner insurance, right?
Correct.
You contact Linda Stermer?
Yes.
Did she ask you anything about why you're contacting her?
Yes, she did.
What did she ask you?
She said that she was wondering why I was calling her because
Right now, just this is hearsay, the way it's framed.
A question.
I don't know if a question
not.
is a statement or an assertion.
It is not.
So I'll overrule the objection.
Thank you.
If it's a statement from Linda Stermer, Your Honor, it's hearsay.
Thank
Can
you.
it be proven true or false? How can a question be offered for the truth of the matter? So anyway, I'll overrule the objection.
Thank you. Sir?
Okay, go
What
ahead.
question did Linda ask you?
she asked me why I was contacting her.
And what did you tell her?
I said because the insurance claim was turned in for her fire.
And what did she ask you about her knowledge of whether she even had property insurance?
She,
These are Linda Stermer statements. They're being offered for the truth of the matter. They're out-of-court statements. He's not a party opponent. They're hearsay.
And by definition, Your Honor, MRE 801 says a question is not hearsay. It can't be proven true or false.
Overrule the objection.
Thank you. Go ahead.
she wanted to know why I was contacting her because she thought she didn't have insurance.
She didn't even think she had property insurance.
Correct?
All right. So you ultimately do interview her
I do.
on the 9th,
On the 10th?
on the 10th? And on the 10th, you also went and inspected the house, the property?
Yes.
Are you're a personal property, is that called personal property?
Property adjuster?
Okay, all the contents, TV, sofas, whatever, clothing?
Yes.
All right. Your Honor, may I approach the witness? I'm going to show you defendant's proposed exhibit N as in Nancy, and ask for you to look at that and tell us if you know what that is.
Yes, those are my photographs.
It's got 14 pages, and if you look at page 1 through 9, what date would those pictures have been taken?
January 10th, 2007.
Same day you interviewed Ms. Stermer?
Yes.
And then you came back, if I look at the last 5 pages,
Yes.
what day did you come back?
January 15th, 2007.
Okay. What's the purpose of taking pictures like this?
Is to document the file. We take pictures all the way around the exterior and then interior pictures.
Okay. You took all the pictures.
Yes.
Your Honor, I move for the admission of exhibit N.
No objection, Your Honor.
Thank you. What I want to do is have you just kind of describe your process and the photos as we go through them. Is that okay?
Sure.
Page number 1, what I'm going to do is I'll just go through, kind of call out the upper right corner, and you tell us what that is, and then we'll go through the picture, okay?
Okay.
What is January 10, you're the adjuster,
Yes.
and this is what? East?
What's, oh, the first picture?
Yes.
Yes, east, correct.
Okay. And before we do that, I'm going to blow this up a little bit. Just so you have your bearings. What's your direction, John? Is that your drawing you obtained?
Yes.
Where'd
I
you
did that.
obtain, you didn't obviously draw that by, on a CAD machine or something?
That's a blueprint from when the proposal was set up for the building official to authorize a permit for the house to be built.
Where'd you get the drawings?
From the building official.
Nobody prevented you from doing that? You just go down there and get a copy of drawings?
I got a copy of them. I don't remember how I got them from there.
Okay. Can everybody see over this? I'll drop it down a little. I'll just over this. And as you can see, west is facing the back of the house,
Correct.
front of the house down here, east,
Yes.
and obviously north to the right.
Yes.
When we talk about directions. Okay. So this is obviously facing east, you said, just the front of the house.
Yes.
What are you doing in the first, several pictures? We're gonna go through those. What's your process?
I'm taking a picture of each side of the house.
So you're just kind of doing a walk around?
Yes.
All right. So we go to the next picture. Oops. This will be the north view. You're going to take a picture of the north side of the house.
Yes.
What are you trying to do? Just get an idea of the general nature of the damage?
Yes.
Right. Then we go, this next one is the west, the back of the house.
Correct.
And that shows obviously the rear. It shows some little bit of debris in the back of the house.
Yes.
Do you know who's been there before you?
Not for sure who was there.
If this is January 10, were you aware that Scott Leroy, the fire marshal, had been there on the 8th?
I don't know.
You're just taking pictures.
I'm taking pictures. Yes.
Same thing, going walking around.
Yes.
South would be the left side of the house.
Yes.
Okay. And then I want to show you this third page, your picture, number 5. It says, view of debris, photo taken from where?
Taken from the east side of the dwelling into the main level.
So this is depicting a photo coming from the right side of the house?
I
East
think
side?
the front's the east. I think it's probably from the front door.
Okay.
Probably looking in the front. I didn't go in the house that much. It wasn't safe.
Why did you not go into the house on January 10th? The first day you're there?
If I did go in the house, I was just barely inside the doors, but it's not safe. You don't want to fall through the floors.
Not safe because there's too much debris all around?
Well, you don't want to fall into the basement.
Did you have some idea as you walked around that the first floor had all collapsed into the basement?
When I first walked around, no, I didn't have. I did when I walked up to it and looked in the front door, then I can see that it was not safe to walk in there.
Okay. This is just a picture of the general debris you're seeing as you're looking through the front door?
Yes.
All right. And then view of debris, can you read that for me, this photo?
Taken from the east side of the dwelling, looking into the first level.
Okay. And that's a little hard to see because it's just a copy, but it's just more of the debris that's all through this house?
Yes.
Okay. Go next, I want to look at these. This is view of debris outside the west side of the walkout basement, which would have been the back, where the bay window is?
Correct.
Right. And what is it on January 10 you're trying to depict here?
I'm just taking a picture of whatever's outside the house.
Okay. Just a few pieces of pipe, as far as you can see?
Yeah, I'm not sure what it is. I just took pictures of the debris.
Okay.
I didn't know if it was going to be personal property items or not.
And you don't know who put it there?
No clue.
Photo 8, continuation of the prior photo on the west side of the walkout basement. So the first one was on the west side. Just shows a little bit more debris.
Correct.
All right. If I circle, try to see if I can blow this up a little bit. Do you know what that is?
It looks like a mattress box spring.
And do you have any idea what these are here, the metal and the spring?
I'm not sure. It could be a couch.
Go to the next picture. View of the basement rec living room facing southwest. So if we go to our again, this is already previously admitted exhibit O, another drawing you received
Okay.
from the building department. And if you can help orient us, that's looking from where to where?
View of basement, rec, living room facing southwest.
Do you know where you are?
I'd probably be right at the bump out right there, more than likely, facing southwest.
Well, it's facing this way, looking from where?
Not somewhere in that room.
Okay.
I couldn't
You
tell you
weren't really-
if I walked along the wall and got in there, but I didn't go in there that much, that very far.
You didn't get into the house, into the main area, right? Because of danger, you said?
That's the basement area.
Right.
If I would have went in the house, it would have been in the basement only.
But you said you didn't get in very far because of safety?
Correct.
Okay. Same thing, facing northeast along the north wall. So north wall facing northeast. is just more rubble you're seeing, just
Yes.
trying to get an idea.
Yeah, probably doing a panoramic around the room, probably what I'm
Okay.
doing.
Next picture, number 11, you actually got into the laundry room, or were you taking pictures through windows?
I couldn't tell you for sure if I zoomed my camera in on those, or I was in near the laundry room. I could have been in the house.
And the laundry room was over here on the south side?
Yeah, I probably took a picture from the doorway.
Okay. Same thing, view of the basement bathroom facing east. The basement bathroom is in the southeast corner of the house? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Picture 11, fallen framing from the basement bathroom facing north toward the utility room. What do you mean fallen framing?
Which picture? Which picture?
I believe it's 11. Let me go back. I think it's 11. Number 13, my fault. Where are we here?
Facing north towards the utility room, so must be in the bathroom, down in the southeast corner.
You're actually taking a picture of the stuff in the bathroom?
Looks like it.
Number 14, more fallen framing in the basement bedroom. Do you know which bedroom it was?
No.
Okay. Safe to say there's debris scattered all over this
Correct.
whole area?
Yes.
15, a view from the basement facing northeast. So that'd be the lower left corner of our drawing? Northeast?
Okay.
Yes?
Yes.
All right. And that shows, what are you trying to show here? Do you see this green? Are these shingles from the roof?
What picture is that?
And on 14,
It looks like the shingles from the roof.
and then picture 16, view of debris in the basement bedroom. And that's all framing that has fallen down?
Yes.
So those are the pictures you took on January 10. Then you came back.
Yes, I did.
Why'd you come back? Oh, I'm in 17 now, one more page. View of debris in the basement bedroom, again, just more of the same, right?
Correct.
Okay. Now, you come back on the 15th. Have you coordinated with anybody to come back?
Yes, they were gonna dig the fire out, I think with an excavator, so I was there just to look at contents, personal property,
Who are you dealing with?
whoever the cause and origin person was.
Do you recall the name Jim Shinsky?
Yes.
All right, have you ever worked with him before?
Yes.
All right, so you remember he was out there?
Yes.
And did he bring the excavator?
I don't think he did. He probably had a subcontractor
right.
out there.
But he arranged for it as far as you knew?
Yes.
There was an excavator there, right?
They were gonna dig it out, and that's why I was there.
Okay. Dig it out, you mean excavate?
Excavate so they can get in there. I think it was frozen.
Do you recall that big excavator knocking down walls of the house so people could get in?
No.
You don't remember that?
No, I just took the pictures of the inside of it.
Okay. If we look at that first picture, debris in the southwest corner of the living room, southwest, facing south. Facing this way, so you're standing somewhere taking a picture toward the south and the southwest corner
Yes.
of the whole living room area? Yes?
Yes.
And that's what you're seeing?
Yes.
Same thing, view the contents in the basement laundry room. Now we're back in the laundry room on the south side, right?
Yes.
Can you tell what you're seeing, or just a bunch of rubble?
I'm not sure what it is.
Okay. Picture 3, a view of the southeast corner of the basement bathroom. The bathroom's down here in the lower left corner, right?
Yes.
Okay. More rubble in every single room, right?
Correct.
View the basement utility room. As we saw, the utility room is right here at the bottom, and would have been underneath the front of the house.
Yes, I've been on the front.
And we're getting toward the end here, but photograph 5, the basement closet behind the fireplace facing north. So you are behind the fireplace. Behind the fireplace facing north, taking a photograph for the right side of the house.
Yeah, it's the lower half of the closet.
Oh,
Bottom half of the closet.
okay.
The next one's the upper half.
Then photo 6, same thing, right? It's
Yeah.
more the same. Yeah, we'll skip over that. Now your content, you're looking for personal property,
Yes,
furniture, TV, clothes, anything.
yes,
View debris in the basement facing northeast. Right? And looks like a frying pan of some sort.
yes.
And some clothes and looks like cards maybe. Yes?
Cards, next picture, cards, yes.
Oh, okay. So this next picture, the last page, actually almost the last page, photograph 9, view of sports cards in the basement utility room facing east. So you were able to find some personal property, right?
Yes,
That you had been looking for,
yes,
including a bunch of baseball cards and debris, right?
yes,
Yeah. And also you found some record albums?
yes.
And that's the end of the photograph. So you found some, but safe to say, there's been a description that there was 2 feet of rubble in the basement from everything falling down. Based on your inspection, would you agree with that? There was a lot of debris throughout.
There's a lot of debris, there always is.
No more questions for this witness. Thank you, Your Honor. Your witness. Let me shut this down.
Mr. McHugh, you worked with Mr. Shinsky, is that correct?
He was an independent cause and origin person who's retired from Michigan State Police. I met him back when he worked for the state police.
Did you also then work on with this investigation with Mr. Willison?
I attended a deposition one time.
So you were present at some point when Mr. Willison interviewed?
Yes.
And you said that was a deposition?
That was a deposition on, I believe, one of her sons.
And you mentioned that you knew Sergeant Leroy, you knew him prior to this?
Yes,
Is it common for law enforcement and the insurance companies to share information?
I think they can do an FM 64 and they can get our file. They can give us information, but we don't get their file. They can subpoena our file.
So you give your information to them if they ask for it?
Yes, with that form. I think it's FM 64.
So they just fill out a form and then you give your information to them?
They send it to the insurance company and then they release it from there. We don't, as an independent adjusting company, we don't release that.
And you said you actually then spoke to Ms. Stermer on the 10th and the 15th?
On the 10th,
On the 10th. The 15th, was that just the day you went to take pictures?
yes,
Okay. So just on the 10th, you spoke to Ms. Stermer?
yes.
And,
I did speak to her another day, but I don't know what day it was.
okay, was that an actual transcribed statement on a different day?
No, on the 10th, I took a recorded statement from her, took these photos, and then I met with her later after I wrote the estimate up and we walked through the things in the various rooms.
So, oh, go ahead.
In reference, because the house was not 100% complete, so we had to go through and maybe some rooms didn't have carpet, some rooms didn't have trim, and that's why we walked through that.
So is it an accurate statement when I say that most of your interview with her was about personal items in the home?
Basically, the interview was mostly what was what room was each one and what was in the rooms. That was a lot of our statement, and at the end, they told you to talk about what happened that night.
And I'll get to that. I'll get to that. But most of it was concerning then about the rooms and the contents and what was finished in each room?
Yes.
And you don't know how any of the debris got in certain areas of the house, do you?
No.
And so on one of those pictures, I believe on picture number 9, you could just take a look at that. I believe that one showed some cards.
From
Baseball
what date,
cards,
what
cards.
date, the 10th or the 15th?
That would have been on the 15th.
Okay. Okay, yes.
And you testified that those were some sort of cards.
Sports cards, more than likely,
And where were those found?
in the basement.
And then I want to have you take a look at then what you stated on picture 8 on the 15th. And
Okay.
I believe there was something of a reference to a frying pan.
And that's what it looks like. It's like a frying pan in the bottom of the picture.
And what's that picture? What room is that?
That's also in the basement,
And what room in the basement?
in the utility room.
So there's a frying pan in the utility room,
Yes,
and that's immediately adjacent to the laundry room, is that correct? According to the drawing that's been
yes,
submitted?
yes.
So you didn't go into the home to actually take a lot of the pictures?
Well, the house was obviously a total loss. So I was trying to see how many personal property photos I could take. So when she turned her inventory in, then I could see that some of the stuff was visible. Usually in these type of claims, there's not much visible, and you just have to go by what they're putting down.
So most of the pictures were taken then were you outside of the house?
Some were outside, looks like I may have been inside a little bit, but I'm not going under the debris that's hanging down or where I can't get into the rooms. That's why some of those are, like from the bedroom, there's only one picture of the bedroom. I'm not going to crawl over debris to go take a picture the opposite direction.
And you said the only place that you did step into was into the basement area?
Yes.
And you couldn't go into the first floor?
According to the pictures, it looks like that was already collapsing down.
So was there anything left of that first floor?
Not much.
Foundation.
I'm just asking about his pictures, Your Honor, and why you didn't go in.
A lot of it collapsed into the basement.
In your conversation where you were talking then with Ms. Stermer the first time on the 10th, did she tell you she had received some life insurance?
Yeah, she's had 2 policies.
And she received some money?
She said that there was 2 life insurance policies. I don't know if she received any monies or not.
She just stated she had some.
Yes, I believe I asked her.
So I want to talk to you a little bit about when you change gears from talking about personal items into talking about the actual incident. So when did you then start talking to her about what actually happened?
What I did is I recorded our conversation with the cassette tape. I had to flip the tape over, and that's when it ran out on that transcribed statement. So I wanted to find out more about the house because Farm Bureau already had hired someone to do the cause and origin. So my focus was the claim itself, the insurance portion of it. And then I asked her at the end of what happened.
So you waited until the end after
Yes.
you'd gone through all the personal items. What was Ms. Stermer's demeanor during this interview?
She was very calm,
Was she anxious in any way?
very cooperative.
And that was why you were going through then the contents of the house?
Yes.
Did she show any emotion as you were going through the contents of the house?
The only time she showed emotion when I asked her if she ran her husband over with the van. She
And when
showed
was-
some emotion there. That was it.
So she only showed emotion at the very end when you asked a question?
Yes.
And I'm sorry, what was the question you asked?
If she knew if she ran her husband over with the van.
And what did she say?
She said, I don't know, but I thought she was going to start crying when I asked her that.
So that was the only time she showed emotion?
Did I recall?
When you were talking to her about the house and the incident, not the personal items, but the actual incident, did she talk to you about her husband Todd?
Just that he owned a business and he sold, I don't know, gloves or something. That's what he did.
Did she talk to
He
you
was
about?
self-employed.
Self-employed. Did she talk to you about any potential actions that would have caused the fire?
Not that I recall.
Anything that Todd did?
About the fuel oil line you're talking about, that what you're asking me?
What did she talk to you about with the fuel oil line?
That he had bled the fuel oil line the night before or the day before. There was air in the line.
And she said that that would have been a potential cause?
No, she just told me that there was fuel oil on his clothes.
She told you there was fuel oil on his clothes?
He may have got fuel oil on his clothes from doing that.
Thank you. Just a few questions, sir. When you interviewed her, she was completely cooperative, right?
Correct?
Answered every one of your questions?
Yes.
Didn't fight you on any questions?
No.
You understand, were you aware she was in the middle of making funeral arrangements that week?
I was when I called her. She was at the funeral home, I believe, in one of my reports.
When you say she was calm, you could also describe her as numb.
Probably, yes.
And finally, this idea of fuel oil lines, she was just suggesting, I don't know, maybe he had fuel oil on his clothes?
Yes, she told me that.
Yeah, you didn't get the impression she knew he had fuel oil on his clothes?
Well, she mentioned that he was bleeding he had air in the line or something, and he may have got fuel on his clothes, and there may be fuel oil in the washing machine. He may have washed his clothes.
She was just kind of speculating?
I don't know.
Okay,
She wasn't
thank you.
Just one last question, Your Honor. When you're looking at these two drawings, so this is the basement, this is the first floor, correct?
Correct.
If I lay them on top of each other, is that accurate? Like in terms of how the house was built?
The other way around.
The other way around?
Yes.
Isn't it? So when I'm looking, like what's above the utility room and the laundry room?
What's above the utility room is the foyer,
The foyer
front door foyer, yeah.
is above the utility room?
Yep, and looks like part of the office as well, and the guest bath.
And then what would be then on top of the laundry and the bath?
Master bath and the office.
So the kitchen is not anywhere near the laundry and the utility room?
No.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Yes, you don't know in the chaos how anything got anywhere in this whole house full of debris and rubble in a collapse of a fire, right?
Usually everything falls down.
But you don't know how anything or where anything was or anything, right?
No.
Thank you.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Jury, do you have any questions of this witness now? No? Can you be excused from subpoena, these other ones?
No objection.
Yes, I'll take that and ask that he be excused.
Thank you. You're excused, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Mueller? Or Mr. Kelly?
Mr. Kelly will take care of this.
Okay.
Your Honor, can we just approach a minute?
You may.
Thank you.
All right, so zoom through the zoom through this sidebar.
Sorry. You can take her back out? Okay. We have a short matter to address, so it should be about a 10-minute break. Okay? Thank you, jury.
All right, they go on a break. We're gonna.
Your Honor, I appreciate you allowing me to come downstairs.
Your Honor, sorry. I expect that Mr. Trankel will testify this afternoon.
Okay.
There are 3 videos that the defense has at least tendered as exhibits. I don't know if they intend to play them or not, but I'm going to raise objections to those being played for the jury.
Okay.
So I don't know if you want to handle those now or wait till he's on the witness stand, but I don't want the jury to see any of them. So, in addition, there's some hearsay contained in one of the videos too, if the court even allows them to be played.
What are the,
The objection is to our videos.
Yes.
If I may explain, Your Honor, we have 3 videos.
Ms. Siderman, did you want to go?
Thank you. Do you mind?
Yeah. Leave this to Mr. Blair.
Thank you, Your Honor.
They are test videos that Mr. Trankel made. They're demonstrative exhibits to illustrate, 1, how fire progresses. He's responsible for that. 2, they're 2 tests of 100% polyester sweatpants, which he's going to testify because clearly, I don't know where the physical evidence went, but those gray sweatpants are 100% polyester. And he's going to be able to show what happens if you have gasoline, 2 ounces, how it burns, and if you don't have gasoline, how it burns. He's the one who made the videos, set it up, and they're demonstrative exhibits to aid the testimony. They're clearly admissible. He's the person laying the foundation for them. They're clearly relevant because we're talking about 100% polyester sweatpants, which are exemplars of the sweatpants worn by Mr. Stermer.
Is it just a silent video that he'll be explaining, or is
Yep.
there someone else talking
No,
in the
just
video?
silent.
I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
There's a voice at the end of one of the videos. You can literally hear the person go, "See, Todd Stermer would have been burned if he'd been wearing those sweatpants."
Oh.
We
And that's a
will make
voice in the
sure
video?
that is, there won't be any audio. I think we can do that through the system, right?
Yeah, I agree that what you just
No.
described, Mr. Blair should not come before the
We
jury.
can mute any audio.
I don't know how we get it back to the jury.
But yeah, how do you get it back?
Because I'll just delete it out before the jury gets case. I can have that done. today.
Okay. Well,
But
just,
here's my issue with the relevance of these videos.
Okay.
If I may respond. It is not an entire pair of sweatpants, number one. It is a cutoff pair, like a pair of shorts. They're stapled to a wooden pole in what appears to be a driveway outside. They're lit with one of them is lit with they try to light it with a match without gasoline. Then the other photograph, Mr. Schrenkel, I presume, stands there, chucks a cup of gasoline on them, and then throws a match at them and lights them. These are misleading videos that are trying to show, because we don't know what the condition of Todd Stermer's sweatpants were. They certainly weren't cut off sweatpants. They certainly weren't stapled to a wooden pole in a driveway, and they certainly weren't outside. So there's a lot of misleading detail in these videos, and I was only provided videos. I was never provided a report attached to those videos that described anything that was going on here. I've never been provided a report from Mr. Schrenkel in this case at all.
Oh, yes, you have, sir.
No, I was told that his testimony would be consistent with the habeas corpus testimony. That is what I was told it would be, and that's on your discovery response,
We
sir.
have a report.
okay, we're here to talk about the video.
Yeah,
so-
let me just address the video. As the court is aware, there is a completely different standard between recreating an accident, let's say just a car accident, and a videotape to illustrate general principles. This is the latter. We didn't attempt to recreate this burn injury, one, because it didn't happen with gasoline, so we couldn't be, and we don't have to have substantially similar circumstances. It is to illustrate principles, and the other one is the video just to show how fire dynamics happen when you start a fire, how fire rises.
So this is
it goes to weight.
so this is just demonstrative, so it's
100%
not
demonstrative.
going back to the jury.
I think it's a demonstrative exhibit that is admissible and should go back to the jury. Just like in any type of product liability case where you have crash videos or whatever that might be made, it's still admissible and can go back to the jury. Doesn't have to be substantially similar. And I believe the case is Lopez versus General Motors. I'm happy to give you a cite if you'd like.
Mr. Blair?
But it has to be based on the problem I have with this, Judge, is they're using polyester sweatpants that they are saying Mr. Stermer was wearing, but they're not even whole pants. They're cutoffs. It's outside, there's no scientific reliability to any of this. The conditions are wholly different, and it's just here to mislead the jury to say, well, Mr. Stermer's sweatpants should have burned because if he had gasoline on because he was in the fire. But it's just here to mislead the facts of what could be because there's so many variables.
Well, but you don't know exactly how it started, right? I mean,
No, but the problem with this is, again, these aren't even a proper exemplar of the pants. They're not even the whole pant. They're a pair of shorts hung loosely on a post outside in the driveway.
We are demonstrating how polyester melts. That's the principle.
why the shorts instead of long pants?
Just because that's how that goes to the weight. It doesn't matter. When polyester burns, it melts, whether it's shorts or long sweats.
How long is the video?
I think it's 2 minutes, maybe less. But I'd cite the case of Lopez versus General Motors Corp., 224 Mishap 618, and that's a 1997 case.
You said
There is also-
Lopez versus what?
Pardon?
Lopez v.
Versus
what?
General Motors. You want that site again, Your Honor?
224 in the shaft, 618?
618 at 1997 case, and then I'll cite People versus Unger, 278 Mishap 10 at 248. I can give you the Northwest site, 749 Northwest 2nd, 272. That's a 2008 case where the court stated, in Michigan, demonstrative evidence is admissible when it aids the fact finder in reaching a conclusion on a matter that is material to the case. Clearly, the issue of whether Todd Stermer's pants would have burned because of gasoline is material to the case. It is the linchpin of Mr. Leroy's position that there must have been gasoline in the house and in the living room because his pants tested positive for gasoline. So the real question would be, if that was true, why didn't they burn? And when they do get gasoline on them, they melt. And any questions that Mr. Blair has, that goes to the weight, not admissibility.
Something to go look up the cases cited. Have you been advised of the cases he's citing yet, Mr. Blair?
Only the one that was just cited, but the other video, Your Honor, I guess, that we have is of this test burn. It's burning a storage unit, not a house, not anything else. I don't see how, other than to show how a fire progresses, but it's completely different construction, completely different. It's got cardboard boxes all over the place in it. It has no relevance at all. I understand that he's saying it's to show how fire progresses, but in a storage unit with boxes, I mean, I don't see how that's relevant at all to this case.
It is not substantially similar to the incident. It's not designed to be. It's designed to show fire dynamics, which is a fundamental principle of fire investigation. How does fire behave? And it's clearly part of NFPA 921, which is what Mr. Leroy said is the guiding principle.
Okay, let me go look at the
Thank
cases
you.
quickly.
Sorry, I was dreaming in La La Land. Good morning, case one. So now we can zoom to zoom. Hang on, actually, I have got a better way to do this. Where is it? There we go.
Ma'am, if you come forward, please. This way. If you raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Okay, why don't you have a seat on the stand there? And then if you could move the microphone so it's right in front of your mouth so the jury can hear you. And then once you're settled in there, tell us your full name and spell your last, please.
My name is Cassandra Grigg, Grigg.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Gregg, would you explain how you know the, well, let me just strike. Do you know the Stermers?
Yes, I do.
Did you know Mr. Todd Stermer?
Yes, I do.
Did you know Linda Stermer?
Yes, I do.
Did you know the children?
Yes, all 5.
Could you briefly explain how your knowledge of the Stermers became?
I was friends with someone who lived down the street from them, and I was introduced to her and started babysitting. When I was 15, I moved in with her and Todd for a while, and we've always been friends since. She then turned around and babysat my 3 oldest kids for me while I was working. Her daughter lived with me for a while. Like, we've just always been family.
And you stated that you lived in the home with the Stermers when you was age 15?
Yes,
And how long did you live with them?
I believe 2 years.
Okay. And from the period of time of, if we go back to 2004 to 2007, did you spend a lot of time with the Stermers during that period of time?
Correct. I saw them every Friday and every Monday.
And what was the occasion for Fridays and Mondays?
I worked the weekend, 12-hour shifts from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. So it was easiest, as I stated, Linda did babysit for me, to take my kids out on Friday night and then come back and pick them up on Monday.
And the house that burned down, had you been to that house during the time that Mr. Stermer was building the home?
Yes,
Did you spend time over there after they had moved into the home?
yes.
Okay. And can you briefly describe the status of the conditions of the house as it was, when they moved in? And would it be fair to say that it was not completed when they moved in? Is that right?
The house was never completed, no.
Okay. What was the basement like?
The basement had a slider door to it. There was a fireplace. Laundry was downstairs. It's where my kids, they spent the most time downstairs in the basement.
Do you recall whether or not the floor of the basement was concrete or not?
No, it wasn't.
Okay. And what about the living area? Were you familiar with the living area of the home?
Correct. Nothing was finished in the house. All the flooring throughout was like board, OSB board. You could see some of the installation around the windows. In the living room upstairs, there was a slider door, but there was no deck or anything attached to it. The fireplace upstairs didn't have any drywall on it or anything. It was all board. Todd did complete the ceiling in there. He put these, I don't know what they're called. He said it was walnut and they look like wood planks. He used that, and completed the ceiling with that.
The fireplace, was it a fireplace in the living area?
Yes.
Okay. And do you recall how the fireplace in the living area was situated and how it was, what it was surrounded with?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Yes, the fireplace in the living area. Did the walls on the fireplace in the living area, were they completed?
No, they were all board. There was no drywall on them. They were all boarded, like the OSB boards
Around the fireplace?
around the fireplace
In the living area?
in the living area.
And was there a fireplace in the basement?
Correct, yes.
And was the fireplace in the basement, was it completed?
No,
Was the wall similar to the same as was in the living area?
yes.
Were you ever there when they were using the fireplace in the wintertime?
Yeah, the basement fireplace was used often.
Okay. There's the driveway of the house, when you come in off the road. What was the conditions that you recall in reference to the driveway into the property? Was it gravel?
It was, depends on which areas of the driveway, but yeah, it was like clay with some stone.
Okay.
The further closer you got to the house where the more vehicles parked, it was just all like clay. And any kind of wetness, a light rain, a light snow, would make it very, very slick.
To park or to
To park.
drive in? Is that right?
Yeah.
Had you ever experienced that yourself as far as driving on the property?
Yeah, my car had gotten stuck several times. I started parking down in the back of the house for that reason.
And when did Ms. Stermer start babysitting for you?
2005.
2005. Okay. Your experience around the family, did you get a feeling that the boys, the mother and the father and the daughters got along good?
For the most part. I mean, they're family, so they squabbled some, but they all got along.
Okay. Were you familiar with any of the, the storage area that they kept some of their valuables in?
I'm not familiar with that.
You wasn't familiar?
I was told there was one, but I've not.
But you never
really-
went out there?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Did you ever go back to the house after the house was burned to assist with anything?
I went one time with Linda when she was looking for her wedding band.
And you was there with her?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Do you know whether or not you all found it? You
No,
found it?
we didn't.
Okay. From your experience, did this home, based upon what you had observed, did it seem like it was going to be the ultimate home for?
Your Honor, I'm going to object. It's speculation. It's leading.
Any response?
Beg your pardon?
Any response?
My response is, I'm just asking her, what did she see, or what did you hear in reference to the home itself from Mr. Stermer or Ms. Stermer?
Okay, the way the question's phrased now will sustain the objection. It's cause for speculation.
Did you ever observe anything unusual about the family nucleus from the time that you've known Mr. and Mrs. Stermer?
As in, I don't know what you might be referring
Or
to.
did you ever see any violence in the home?
Yes,
When?
throughout the whole time I've known them. Mostly when I lived with them in Portage.
So this is two places, two different locations you live with the Stermers?
I lived with them in their home when they lived in Portage, and the house in Lawrence she babysat my kids at.
So the house in Lawrence, did you live in that house
No,
at all?
no.
So you never lived in that
No,
house?
I never lived in that house.
You just was over there on a lot, on a lot of vacations you spent?
Correct.
at
I
that
spent a
house?
lot. I spent a lot of family stuff with them, like graduation parties, Christmases, holidays, birthday parties. Plus, she had my kids every weekend. So,
At the home in Lawrence?
yes, correct.
Okay. May I have just a second, Judge? Ms. Griggs, prior to January the 7th of 2007, which was the date of the fire, when was the last time that you were at the house?
I believe it had been about 4 weeks.
About 4 weeks?
Yes.
Okay. And when I was asking about the conditions of how you, I was going to say, how would you describe the unfinished parts of the house? Did you ever see any smoke detectors installed in the house?
No. There was holes cut in the ceiling, and you could see wires hanging down, but there was no actual smoke detectors. And I remember this clearly because I was court ordered to take a video of the house in a custody battle with my son's father, and he wanted to be able to see where my kids were being watched at. And the house was unfinished, there was no smoke detectors, and I never made the video because he would have eaten me alive with it.
So you had actually seen every part of this house?
The only part of the house I didn't see any of the bedrooms.
None of the bedrooms?
None of the bedrooms. Never been in any of the bedrooms.
But all the other rooms, the basement, you didn't see, you said had there been any attempt to place fire detectors in the basement?
Yeah, I remember there was a hole down there in the ceiling with 2 wires hanging out, like it was set to put the fire detector in there, but it never got put in.
Okay. And that was the same way on the living area?
The same way, I remember the one in the kitchen as well.
Okay. I have no further questions, John.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Ms. Gregg.
Good afternoon.
So I just want to ask you a couple clarifying items, okay? So how would you describe your friendship with Ms. Stermer at the time of the fire?
We had a good friendship.
Were you very close?
Yes.
Did you talk about a lot?
I mean, yeah.
And at that time, you said you had known her for how long?
I've known her since I was 14.
And I don't mean to get personal, but how old are you now?
47.
So you're 47. So when you're talking about babysitting, you're not talking about babysitting the boys.
No, she babysat. When I was younger, I babysat for her children.
Which child? Which children?
All 5 of them. Ashley, Brittany, Trevor, Trev, and Corey.
Okay.
And then when I got older and had kids, Linda babysat for my kids.
Were you close to Trevor, Trenton, and Corey?
I wouldn't say close. We all got along. We all cared about each other, but I was always closer with the girls.
And so were you aware that the boys' bedrooms were in the basement?
I don't believe so.
And that's where you spent the time then with your children?
Yeah.
Were the boys ever present on the weekend in the basement with you?
Not normally with me, but they hung out during the day with my children.
Did you know that Todd and Linda were having marital problems at the time of the fire?
Yes.
And you weren't there that weekend, correct?
No.
You said you hadn't been there for about a month?
Correct.
And you never lived in that house?
No, I did not.
When you lived with them, that was in a house in Portage?
Correct.
And you never lived in the County Road 215 house?
No, I did not.
How many times were you at that house in County Road 215?
Numerous.
Was that every weekend, you said?
Yeah, every Friday, every Monday, times in between.
Did you go from the time they started building the house until the end?
Yeah.
When did you make a copy of this video?
I never actually made the video. I was ordered to make the video and decided not to because of the condition of the home. It would have been an issue in my custody battle.
When did you make it?
I didn't make it.
When did you see this? When were you going to make this video?
In 2005.
In 2005?
Correct.
And you never told anybody, well, let me ask you this. You remember testifying in 2010, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I did.
And you never testified about any smoke detectors or anything at that time?
No, I didn't.
And you said that the Stermer family used the fireplace many times?
Yes.
Were you aware if they used the upstairs fireplace many times?
I'm not aware of that.
Did you go upstairs?
I have been upstairs.
So you described your relationship with Linda as pretty close?
Yes.
Did she ever tell you about Chris Williams?
No.
So in the 6 months preceding the fire, you had no idea that she had a boyfriend? Is that a no?
That's no, sorry.
Isn't it true that you had an on-again, off-again relationship with Ms. Stermer?
I mean, I guess we've always been friends, but did we reach out every day and speak? No.
There are times that you weren't friends?
We've always been friends.
Times that you'd fight with her?
Of course.
So you said that, let me ask you, the driveway you said was made of gravel, correct?
It's clay.
And then I think you had said that there were stones?
Depending on which part of the driveway, like when you started towards the road, it would get worse as you got closer to the house.
And would you agree that the driveway was an incline up to the house?
Yes.
And so you said that you got stuck in the driveway, and so then that's why you would go down the hill and park in the backyard?
It wasn't really a backyard. I mean, But yes, that's what I did. I parked down there every time I brought the kids. The slider patio door was like 20 feet away from where I park. I'd unload my 3 kids, get their overnight bags, take it inside.
And then you would go up the hill to get back on the driveway.
I would reverse out until I could turn my car back up the driveway
From the backyard?
from the back, yes.
And you go up the hill?
Yes.
And you said your kids went there almost every weekend up until about a month before the fire?
Yes.
And they stayed in the basement and played in the basement?
Well, they didn't stay in the basement, but that's where I remember doing the majority of stuff if we weren't outside, yes.
Where'd they sleep?
They had couches and stuff set up
In the basement?
in the basement.
So the kids slept in the basement?
Well, I don't know.
You don't know where your kids sleep?
I don't recall where they slept, sorry.
Are you still close with Ms. Stermer?
Yes.
Would you say anything to keep her out of trouble?
No, I wouldn't lie.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. Kelly, any more questions with that?
Ms. Griggs, just for clarification, when referred to the fireplace upstairs, it's actually the living room, is that right?
It's in the living room, yes.
The living area?
That is the living room, yes.
So it's a living area and a basement?
And a basement, yes.
Okay, all right. Thank you. And this driveway or the area that you refer to that's sandy or muddy, is that something that's consistent, or is it just when there was
That's
very
both.
inclement weather?
Yes, that was only if it was wet. Any kind of wetness. A light sprinkle of rain, a light snow, could be heavy rain, heavy snow, but if it was wet, it was slick.
But you can move in and out of it though, right?
Yeah, you can. So sometimes I would get stuck in it.
Okay. But you didn't have to have a tow truck
No.
to pull you out of it?
You
though.
kind of rock your car back and forth and rock yourself out of it.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Jury, do you have any questions of this witness? That's one.
And again, zoom, zoomy, zoom, zoom. That's just, we are going through.
That you and your kids had from the jury, no objection from the lawyers. You had testified that you and your kids had been at the Stermer home every Friday to Monday from 2004 to 2007. Why not the last month before the fire?
Job changed.
Thank you. Counsel, any questions in light of that question? She said job change. Any questions? Any other questions, jury? May she be excused from her subpoena, counsel?
No objection.
Yes, Your
Okay,
Honor.
thank you, ma'am, you're all done and you're excused from your subpoena obligation. And counsel, can you approach, please?
Yes, Your Honor.
So y'all better get ready. Fire expert fraud defense will be coming up. And we get on it.
Counsel on the one.
Apparently I have to zoom some more. And we don't have much time to go, and after this, we can start today's date and zoom throughout that too.
Sir, is this your next witness, I assume? Okay. Sir, do you want to confirm? You raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please have a seat, and once you're settled in, we'll have you state your full name and spell the last, please.
Robert James Trenkle, Trenkle.
Thank you. Mr. Mueller?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Trinkle.
Good afternoon.
I'm going to ask you some questions today about your work in this case. We'll just get into that in a second. Can you tell the jury what it is you do for a living? And then we'll get into how you and I got together on this case.
Okay. Yeah, I've been involved in the fire service since 1966. At that time, I became a trial firefighter for the city of Detroit and went through a 6-month training program. 320 hours were in theory, book learning, how fire propagates, how it progresses, and how to suppress it, and how the causal factors of it. And stayed in there, well, in 1967, the next year, 6 months later, we had a huge riot in Detroit and had innumerable arsons. So my goal was to be a fire investigator. And I tried to join I did join the Detroit Police, but I found out after I got hired that the fire department is where the arson squad was, and I commented that where the guys carry guns and badges and they have no uniform, their employee clothes. Yeah, they're from the fire department. So I went back and kept my job there. And after 4 or 5 years, I went from the fire division to the fire marshal's division, where I, after 6 months training again, became a fire inspector. Had to learn about building construction, codes, flammable liquids storage, all kinds of different things that relate to fire inspection for fire safety, basically.
Can I stop you right there? What's the difference between being a fire inspector, for example, and a firefighter?
For a firefighter?
Yeah.
Okay. Being a firefighter, we worked 24-hour shifts. We responded immediately to any alarm that came in for our particular engine houses. I think back when I started, we probably had maybe 80 or 90 different stations. Not the same today. But we were the 5th largest city in the country, just 100,000 behind Philadelphia back then. And eventually we were known as the murder and arson capital of the world, which wasn't too good. So it gave me a lot of experience. But as far as going from firefighting to fire inspection, you work in a 5-day, 8-hour shift there. And we had 2 shifts, days and afternoons, and different shifts would have different responsibilities. For example, I talked about flammable liquids. Any place that had flammable liquid storage, any vehicles, tankers that would come through the city, we'd have to inspect every one of those, tag them so they were cleared for the year. Building construction, when buildings were built, we had to make sure that they were properly built as far as fire safety. We, go hand in hand with the building inspectors. They take care of a lot of the other things. Electrical inspectors would take care of theirs, plumbing inspectors would take care of theirs, and fire, we would take care of ours, make sure that they were conforming to the fire safety codes. As a portion of the fire investigators, I was in charge of, for a year or so, all the hospitals and all the schools in the city of Detroit. They have special needs too, or special requirements, and so I had to learn about that. And in those facilities, if the arson squad was really busy, we would fill in for them on those 2 that we had jurisdiction on, and once we found that the fire was an arson, we'd turn it over to them. We'd like capacity in the afternoon shifts. We would go into bars and restaurants and make sure that their exits were open, everything was, their fire extinguishers were up to date, and they didn't have anything that was dangerous that we'd potentially have to close them down until they fixed it. And sometimes we did close a couple places down for whatever deficiencies they had, because we didn't get to them all the time. There were others that were like torch burner units in a repair garage. We had to inspect, there were several different entities we'd inspect annually, like the hospitals, like the schools.
This is all with the city of Detroit?
Yeah. Well, Wayne State University had some of their buildings outside of the city, and we go inspect them also, probably jointly with, I remember Southfield for sure. Wayne State had a pretty big facility there, and we jointly inspect that.
Can I stop you there and just ask, you've got, as a firefighter or a fire investigation expert, you've got special skill sets in fire suppression, tactics, and strategy?
Yes.
Tell us what background you have that makes you have subject matter expertise in that.
Other than college level classes, actual practical application, through the course of being in the firefighting division, I was mostly in a ladder company. There are fewer ladder companies than engine companies. We put aerial ladders up, break holes in the roofs and ventilate buildings so the fire guys on the engine would be able to go in without, well, not without, there's still in excessive heat and things like that, but if we vent through the roof, through the roof, we're able to allow them to come in, and it kind of lights up the fire. Sometimes there's not enough oxygen, so when we open the hole in the roof, it's safe. You've probably seen the movie Backdraft or heard of it anyhow, and that was something that never could happen, but backdrafts do happen. I didn't mean it that way, but backdrafts are because of bad fire suppression operations, or when a structure has been smoldering for a long time. If you open a door on a horizontal plane, there will be an explosion and you can get hurt. But venting at the top, you won't. So all those are fire tactics and strategy. And back in the 60s, there were classes for associate degree programs by the community college, and I took all the courses they had to offer at that point, and tactics and strategy was one of them. Fire.
Let me just stop you there if I may.
Okay.
In terms of tactics and strategy, you go through a lot of training as a firefighter to determine what are the proper tactics, what are the proper strategies.
Sure. The 320-hour course we had in the beginning of our being a firefighter, much of that was regarding how to go into a fire, how to fight it. Like you may have heard that the 2 in, 2 out practices.
Why don't you explain that for us? The ground rules, the rules of thumb for fighting fire.
Right. None of us were ever supposed to go into a fire alone. There are other occasions, if we saw an individual that we may have been able to save, sometimes the guys would, go in and do it without having a partner there. One of my buddies got burned pretty bad doing that, and fortunately we were there to back him up with water and pour water on him, but he ended up not staying in the department for what happened to him. But, sometimes we think we're Mr. Asbestos Man, I guess. We could go in because other people can't. And we have some equipment, but it's not going to stop the heat penetrating and fire still getting to us. And back in the old days, we didn't have any self-contained breathing apparatus. We had MSA filtration type masks. It was harder to breathe with that than it was just going in and facing the fire.
Mr. Frankel, can you give us an idea of the training that you're taking to handle fires? Give us an idea of if you're inside a burning building, what the atmosphere is like, what the risks are, those kind of things. Just the overall.
Okay. Well, say 2 guys go in with a fire hose, fire line, we call it. Used to be 1.5 inches, now it's 1 3/4 inches that we carry in. But when I started, it was 2.5 inch line, and you couldn't even make it turn. If I brought in that door, it'd be hard for me to turn toward you because there's so much water and so much pressure. So eventually we evolved to at least having 1.5 inch line separated into 2.5 inch line. And we were able to maneuver very much with that, but having 2 people in, again, 2 people out. But you learn the basics of fire and how it behaves naturally. Fire is governed by fire science, and fire physics, fire chemistry, fire dynamics, and it's altered by certain other things like ventilation, firefighting suppression operations, all those kinds of things can change.
I think he's giving expert testimony without actually going through his qualifications.
He's going through his training, Your Honor, but I'll try to shorten this up.
Shorten it up, please.
Mr. Frankel, can you give us an idea of the dangers that you face as a firefighter that you trained against and why you're training for that?
Well, I guess asking it that way, I have to start explaining, but if I just go to the fire tactics and strategy, maybe I can explain it better that way, unless
No, just the dangers that you're facing when you're inside a burning building.
you face death all the time. You don't know you're going to come back out. Normally speaking, we think we are. Through the course of my time in the Detroit Fire Department, we lost, during the riots, 1 guy was shot, 1 guy was electrocuted, 1 guy died.
Your Honor, I appreciate Mr. Trinkle's war stories, but
Yeah, they're interesting, but I don't think they're relevant. Thank you.
Mr. Frankel,
Yes,
you are certified as an origin and cause expert, right?
I am.
And how many hours have you taken training in all aspects of firefighting? Not firefighting, fire investigation, I should say.
All the things that we were talking about qualifying, thousands of hours.
Are you also certified by
Certified.
organizations?
Certified by the Detroit Fire Department when I was there for fire investigation, fire inspection, the International Association of Arson Investigators, which I sat on the Training and Education Committee for 10 years and still participate.
Is that, I take it international, it's a worldwide organization?
Yes,
And you have to go through a lot of training to become
Yes.
certified?
yes.
Yeah.
Certification.
Go ahead.
Certification takes a lot of background for them to approve you by your training and by your knowledge and testing and all of that.
What other organizations are you certified by?
The National Association of Fire Investigators also, and board certified through the Certification Committee for IAAI.
Have you taught fire investigation tactics, fire investigation origin and cause?
Yes.
Tell us real quickly, when and where.
Well, we had, in Detroit, I got in the arson section in beginning of 1974. At that point, there were a lot of other jurisdictions like Michigan State Police. They didn't have their own academy. They came down to us and trained. We trained them on an afternoon shift and a midnight shift. So they got hundreds of fire incidents of exposure, trained them not only just with the physicalness, but also the book learning part of it. We also trained ATF, FBI, trained in a lot of different other areas through the course of my earlier years. And then,
Let me stop you. Have you trained people overseas?
yes,
Where?
Auckland, New Zealand, Morton and Marsh, England.
And have you trained people in various states in the United States?
Yes,
Okay. How many times, you're now in this fire origin and cause business for how many years or decades?
by doing fire investigations exclusively. 71, I started in fire prevention, but exclusively doing nothing else except fire investigations has been since 1974.
Since 1974, how many times would you say you've been qualified as an expert witness in various subjects relating to fire investigations?
Into the thousands, but I would put it better. Less than 2,000, more than 1,000.
Okay. In state and federal courts?
Yes,
In Michigan?
in Michigan and many other states.
Your Honor, at this time, I've got Exhibit P as in Paul. I'd move for the admission of his CV, Exhibit P, and move for the admission of Mr. Tranquil, or the certification of Mr. Tranquil as an expert, fire investigation, fire suppression, fire inspection, and fire forensic analysis, I should say.
Fire investigation,
As fire suppression tactics, as a fire inspector in building, fire origin and cause, and as a fire forensic analyst.
Thank you, Mr. Blair.
Well, I haven't heard anything that I think justifies fire forensic analyst, Your Honor. I've never actually heard of that.
Happy to do that right now. It'll take a couple minutes.
Okay, you can lay a foundation for
Sure.
this fire forensic. I haven't heard
Do you-
anything on that either.
Do you have subject matter expertise in terms of fire forensic analysis? And if you do, tell us what it is and what your background is.
Okay, well, forensics usually means that there's going to be some kind of court case or whatever, either civil or criminal, and that's the forensics part of it. In fire, obviously, we're talking about what I've done for most of my life, 58 and a half years and more. And the analyst part of it is I'm analyzing, a lot of times, other people's investigations prior to mine, even actually when I had 7 investigators, 2 engineers working for me years ago, and I would have to analyze and make sure their reports were correct, or not only correct, that they could present with all the physical evidence what they had to say in their reports. Otherwise, they had to go back and do something else, same as I had to do in the arson squad.
Is that relating to documentation?
Yes, I mean, the whole totality of the fire science and fire investigations and being involved in court cases, looking at other people's reports and to evaluate how they did what they did or didn't.
How long have you been doing that?
Last probably 20 years or more.
Okay, move for the admission of Mr. Tranquil as an expert in fire forensic analysis.
I've heard no expertise or testimony that would warrant him being an expert in conducting analysis of other people's reports. That's not exactly a scientific field, Your Honor.
That's called peer review, Your Honor.
Well, that's
And
not
under-
an expert field.
And under 702, by virtue of his education, training, and work experience, he is certainly qualified to talk about documentation and proper methods.
I'm going to allow him as an expert in the other fields. I'm just a little confused about what the latter one is, but certainly he can testify as an expert if he's going to opine
Thank you.
on the case. Mr. Blair, you're still standing. I didn't know if you were.
No. I just wanted to make sure, so in case the board had any questions, that's why I was still standing up. Stand up, sit down.
So I think I move for the admission of Exhibit P, his CV.
Mr. Mueller, Mr. Anderson, tendered in its entirety community discovery, the CV.
Mr. Lee, that's Exhibit P in your book.
Okay, that's what I'll make sure. Thank you. No objection.
Okay.
I know.
That exhibit into evidence and acknowledge his testimony as an expert, as noted.
Thank you. We've only got a little bit of time, so I'll keep this brief and to the point. You were asked by me to do work on this Linda Stermer fire investigation case.
Yes, after I'd been involved in it before.
You were involved with it in other aspects, correct?
Yes,
All right. Then you and I met roughly about 2019, that sounds about right, end of 2018?
probably, I'm not sure, but 5, 6, 7 years ago, whatever it might be.
And what is it I asked you to do in terms of fire origin and cause analysis?
To look at all the documentation in any fire. We're speaking this case or all cases?
To determine, obviously, the house was gone by the time you were involved, right?
Yes, in this instance, yes, it was already gone. I was out at the remains, which was just a cement slab, which was the basement, and portions of the walls that were on the side.
Okay. We're going to probably get into it a little bit more tomorrow, but I want to just kind of briefly touch on, what did you review in terms of Mr. Leroy's excavation? What types of data did you collect to determine whether he did a proper excavation or anything at all.
No, object is the foundation here. I don't think he's asked him what he reviewed, everything that we're jumping way ahead here.
I just asked him what you reviewed. What data did you collect?
I think a little more foundation, please.
You were asked to review Scott Leroy's work because you couldn't do your own investigation. The house didn't exist, right?
Right.
And you were asked to review his report, his photographs, right?
Yes,
Did you review other folks' photographs?
yes.
Who?
James Shinsky, who worked for the insurance company, who's retired Michigan State Police, and the adjuster, Len McHugh, I saw his photographs, and he had, his report, I read just the fire part of the report, but a lot of it was for structural damage and all that, so I didn't go into all that.
One of the things you adhere to is the scientific method.
Yes.
Okay. I ask if you can just very briefly put up exhibit, it's already been marked Exhibit D, and if you can just kind of take us through the steps.
Are you asking me?
Just a minute. Yes.
I see it, I just didn't know if you wanted me to bring mine up.
Are you familiar with the scientific method, sir?
Yes.
How important is it in the type of work you do?
It's extremely important. It's an integral part of what we do. In the fire service, we basically use that as our base, but what we really call it is the systematic approach, which covers exactly all the things that are there. But, when it says, need the problem, you have a fire, you have to go investigate it, and then you have to collect data, analyze that data, formulate hypotheses by what you've found, and continue that process with all the different data that you have until you look at every possible cause for a fire and analyze each and every one of those potentials. And if you can't disprove more than one, you've got to determine the cause is undetermined. And if you come to one and only one possibility, nothing else could have caused this fire, then you have a reliable, sound cause for the fire, if you've covered all the bases properly.
What's the premise of the scientific method? Reliability?
It's one of them. Yes, to come down to the truth of what happened.
Well, when we're talking about analyzing data, developing a hypothesis, testing the hypothesis, you see how it just kind of circles back and forth? It's an iterative process?
Right. As I said, you do it over and over again. It sounds crazy, but when you're going to a fire scene, in your mind, you're looking at building on the exterior and saying, well, I know it didn't happen over here, so we got to look over here. And in the continuum like that until you get down to the area where you can definitely define the origin.
In terms of the scientific method, you listened to Mr. Leroy testify last week.
Yes.
Would you say that collecting data is the most important step?
Yes, if you don't collect data, you can't analyze it.
And if
you can't
analyze
test it.
You can't develop a hypothesis?
Correct.
Yeah. Would you agree with Mr. Leroy that if you don't follow each of these steps in a systematic fashion, then you don't have a reliable methodology?
Objector, I think he's leading his witness.
Did you hear Mr. Leroy testify regarding improper methodology?
I heard him testify to proper methodology and then improper methodology, yes.
Did you hear him testify regarding garbage in, garbage out?
I believe you asked him that question, or one attorney asked him that question, and he concurred.
And what does that mean to you as an expert?
It means you didn't properly do your investigation, and if you make a determination without having all of the information, your determination is invalid.
Okay. Unreliable.
Unreliable.
What would you say in terms of if your methodology is unreliable, what happens to your opinions?
If your methodology is unreliable, I don't see how you can make a reliable decision or conclusion.
So it really all starts with collecting the amount of data you need?
Objection leading.
This is continued leading, Mr. Miller.
What does it depend on to have an objective methodology? Where does it start?
Well, you have to, by following the scientific method, you have to make sure that you collect anything and everything that may have a relationship to the origin first and then the cause thereafter of the fire.
And part of that is collecting data is excavation.
Objection leading, Your Honor. I understand he's maybe not used to asking direct questions, but we need to follow the protocols.
Sir, how important is excavation in the process of collecting data?
Well, it depends on how bad the fire is. What excavation to me usually means, an archaeological type dig, we liken it to that, to take layer by layer off of debris that, particularly if you have a house that's, or a structure that's partially collapsed or totally collapsed. But sometimes you have a small fire, say a careless cooking fire that doesn't go much farther than the top of the stove. You wouldn't need to do excavation there unless there was debris that fell from an upper cabinet or whatever.
How about if you have a death in a fire? Is that significant in terms of how you must do your excavation or that you do it?
Well, you go to the little crazy expression like, crossing your T's and dotting your I's and making sure that investigation is more thorough than you even could imagine. You take that extra effort to make sure, did I do this or did I do that? And make sure you do all of the potential things you need, because not only do you have property loss now, you have a human being that's no longer here.
And where does documentation fall in that importance?
The documentation becomes much more stringent, higher level.
It's 4 o'clock here. I got maybe 2 minutes. Okay. In this particular case, did you review Mr. Leroy's documentation of his excavation?
What he had in his report and what he did, yes.
Okay. Did you come to some opinions in terms of his documentation of an excavation of this Stermer residence?
Well, his documentation to start with, had things in it that had nothing to do with anything scientific about what may have caused the fire.
Objection, Your Honor, he's asking about excavation. He's going off on a completely different tangent here. He's not even being asked.
The question is not responsive, so if you could ask the question again.
I'm sorry, I kind of thought I had to lead into that because.
I just want to know, for our jury, before we go home, do you have opinions as to the quality of the documentation that Mr. Leroy did in terms of his excavation?
Okay, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. There is very little documentation of what he did excavation-wise. There were some things that were, he declared the fire happened in the living room, and the living room's collapsed, so the evidence is in the basement level. And he moved some pieces of flue vent piping that I saw on the outside, and some furniture pieces, some springs, and some framework.
Did you hear his testimony regarding how much of the living room he did?
He said he did all of it.
Did you hear his testimony about how clear the floor was when he was done?
How clear the floor was?
Yes.
Usually if you're talking about clear, you've hosed it off with, the assistance of fire apparatus or something like that. I don't remember him saying. I don't remember him saying.
Okay. So if you could try to just respond to the question that's asked of you.
Are you aware that Mr. Leroy did his excavation and investigation on the 8th, the day after fire?
That was what he said.
Okay. Are you aware that Mr. McHugh, you reviewed Mr. McHugh's photographs that we saw earlier?
Yes.
On the 10th?
Yes.
And are you aware of Mr. Shinsky's photographs on the 15th?
Yes.
Are those pieces of data that you collected to arrive at opinion?
All those things help, yes.
When Mr. Leroy said that he conducted a full excavation of the 18 by 18 living room, based on your review of Mr. McHugh's photos, Mr. Shinsky's photos, what is your opinion as to whether that is true?
There's nothing in the photographs that show he did.
Any other documentation?
What do you mean?
Like notes, reports about the excavation?
No.
I think it's 4 or 5, Your Honor. Probably a good place.
Jury will call it a day for today. Counsel, can you approach, please, before I send them home?
All right. Let's just zoom into the front to see if there's anything we need to see for today, and then we can jump on.
Unfortunately, I'm able to find my instruction to read to you all again. So, during the trial, do not read, listen to, or watch any news reports about the case. Under the law, the evidence.
Okay, we don't need to listen to that. We've been listening to that for ages. We probably can recite better than the judges so far. But does that mean that we are gonna go to this trial live? Well, live, we're gonna be catching up today to what's been happening, but that is okay, because oh my days, I just came in a very bad time. Okay, good thing we are gonna go back to the beginning, because that was scary. Oh, retired not board. We are catching up on this one from yesterday. Because we've been doing Lori Vallow live. We've been catching up on this one a little bit throughout the day, and then we do good portions of it to it. But we are literally about to start day 8, and the good thing is we can zoom into the breaks, put to the playback speed quicker. So yeah, it's better. So yeah, so because we are doing 2 trials at once. Great. All right, let's start day 8. That is today's date.
As it relates to the speed at which fire might grow and propagate in the absence of liquid accelerants under certain conditions, and how polyester clothing might burn when doused with 2 ounces of gasoline versus how it might burn in the absence of any gasoline. Does everyone agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
We agree, Your Honor.
So I would give it this morning when they come in, because that witness is on the stand. We left him on the stand, right? Okay.
Well, I guess I would ask maybe you give it right before they admit the
Yeah, the first,
Okay. Wait till you got it.
Yeah, I think I would prefer it be fresh in their mind.
oh, that's what I think I had suggested, 2 separate ones, if you want to do that. So when we will be doing them at separate times. You can read the one for the warehouse burn video and just substitute the other clause for the closing video.
Which are you doing first? Which video?
Probably the burn video, the warehouse video.
Any position on whether I read it?
No,
twice?
you can break
Okay.
it up, that's fine.
Okay. Okay, so just remind me, counsel, to read that when you get to that point. And I'll read it for each video, and then we'll put it in our finals as well. I think it's a good idea to include it in finals.
I don't know that that's necessary.
Okay, we'll fight
Oh, I
about
will.
it. We'll fight about it later then.
Yeah.
So I guess jury's not here yet. Any other matters, and we can break until they get
I'll
here?
wait for Skip. I think Skip wanted to address something.
Okay. Okay, I'll break until he's here then.
Oh, should we wait for Skip on that?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry, trying to type as fast as I could. And let's zoom. Zoom, 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 zoom. No, I'm not gonna sing, sorry. Oh my days, I like zooming. This is awesome. We're only like an hour behind with catching up this very quickly. We're gonna be live at no time. Hang on, there's a sidebar. No, there's not the sidebar. So let's just put it there.
Okay, we're back on the record. Counsel, I think we're still awaiting one juror. Was there a matter to address before the jury, Mr. Kelly?
No, I think
We're good? Okay.
And apparently we are zooming some more. Da, 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 da. And another sidebar. My days, in a second we're gonna be live.
Well,
Okay.
I think that's wholly reasonable, given that they're not, who they are.
Can you prepare that for me?
We
Just,
just added on to the others that it's,
what do you want me to say? What is, if there's exemplar, what is the purpose of them being offered? There's exemplar sweatpants, apparently.
Correct.
What is the purpose if I give a limiting instruction?
just, we found a pair.
My days, they keep going off and on with the sound.
So why doesn't someone else other than me or Joe prepare this for
No,
the
that's fine.
council?
I don't have any problem
So
with that.
you two can work through how you want the wording before you introduce those.
I think give us a few minutes. Actually,
Okay.
talk to them.
Yeah, let's talk to this jury.
I can do that when you're talking with her.
To all the media in the courtroom, we need to speak to a juror. Please shut off all recording.
Uh-oh. She has a good voice, though. Like, she was literally all media. I'm not gonna say it because I'm gonna probably, well, court is on a break. There was a jury issue, apparently. Let's zoom again. Oh, it went too fast, too far.
Council, we're back on the record in the case of People versus Linda Stermer. Any matters to address before we bring in the jury?
Your Honor, Mr. Blair just got to run downstairs. I thought he'd be back, but if we could just wait just a few minutes, I'm sure he'll be coming in the door in just a few seconds.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Bursting through the door.
Yeah. I think you just forgot something.
And Yet not starting. Apparently, this is wild.
So counsel, on the sweatpant instruction, is this the final, the one you sent, Jay?
Yep, Wolf and I wrote that together.
You sure it's only 2 sentences?
It took us 10 minutes to fashion it.
Okay, the sweatpants you will see in the video are not the same pair of sweatpants involved in this case. They are an exemplar pair of 100% polyester sweatpants. That's it? Okay. And you'll alert me when it's time to give that instruction, Mr. Mueller or Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, we'll bring in the jury then. And Mr. Mueller, I think you had your witness on the stand.
Thank you. I'm recalling Robert Frankel.
Morning. Sir, before you have a seat, I'll let you put your bag down, but before you have a seat, I'll swear you in again. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please have a seat. And Mr. Mueller, you may continue.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
What is the witness placing all over the bench? I see a bunch of binders coming out. What are those?
They have information, Mr. Leroy's photographs, things of that nature to refer to when I testify.
I would prefer, well, if they're going to be, are they even exhibits? I mean, we need to rely on what's been admitted or...
Your Honor,
I understand that. I'm just kind of throwing that out there so we're all, you know.
Okay.
That,
Sir, you can leave them out for now, and we'll deal with it. If there's issues along the way, we'll deal with them as they come up.
thank you. May I begin? Thank you. Mr. Tranquil, yesterday we were talking about the scientific method at the end of the day. You remember that?
Yes.
And the steps you have to follow?
yeah,
And the consequences of if you don't follow those steps. You remember that?
yes.
There's something that Mr. Leroy had testified to regarding a book called NFPA 921. Can you tell us what that is and what significance that book, that guide, has in the fire origin and cause industry?
NFPA 921 is listed as a guide for fire and explosion investigations on the front cover. It was first printed in 1992. The most current print is 2024. And it's a book that assists in how procedures in fire investigation, many of the other variables but that relate to and the periphery of fire investigation and direct fire investigation.
Okay. In a kind of a nutshell, does it give you the do's and don'ts of when you're doing a fire investigation?
That would be a good way of putting it. Yes.
Is that something that you've been trained on and fire investigators are trained on in the course of their careers?
Since 1992, I used that book as one of my texts when I taught in college level at Down University, a basic and advanced class. I used that book in Kurt's Fire Investigations as supplement.
Is NFPA 921 considered in the industry kind of the golden standard of the guidebook of how you train?
Yes, on the front of the book, it says it's an ANSI-approved document. It used to say it's an ANSI standard, American National Standards Institute standard, but a standard has to be in the form of shall, will, and must. Codes, when I enforced codes in the fire inspection, fire department in Detroit, all the codes had to be met specifically. This can't be met specifically because there's too many other materials to cover, but NFPA 1033 is a standard, and it refers to this book as the book to follow.
Okay. I want to, as we now talk about your role in this case and what you did, I want to introduce subject matters, and you tell me if NFPA 921 guide you in those areas. I first want to talk about Mr. Leroy's excavation. Does NFPA 921 provide guidance in the importance of excavation?
Yes, it does.
And let me show you something. Is this a section 18.3.2.3 that discusses excavation and its importance?
Yes, it does.
Your Honor, I guess, are we meeting these as an exhibit?
No.
Since we're displaying them to the jury, or?
Again, under 707, it's a learned treatise that Mr. Leroy talked about, and it's used for impeachment of Mr. Leroy because it gives the guidelines that he didn't follow. Thank you. It's not going back as an exhibit. So let's talk about what this section says. All these times, this new pen. Adequate debris removal is essential for a thorough fire investigation. You agree with that?
Absolutely.
Why?
Why? Because if you don't do adequate debris removal, there's no way you can articulate the exact cause of the fire without clearing everything and making sure there isn't something else that you didn't uncover that could have been a cause.
Okay. The next part says, one of these times, there we go. Inadequate removal of debris and the resultant exposure of limited portions of fire patterns and other evidence may lead to an incorrect analysis. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I do.
Is everybody taught that?
Yes.
That would include Mr. Leroy.
I don't know what training he actually has. He should have had it, yes.
Okay. And then finally, a fire scene investigation normally involves dirty and strenuous work. Acceptance of this fact is essential in conducting a proper fire investigation. Do you agree with that?
I do.
You saw what Mr. Leroy said about how he excavated and his attempt to collect data.
Yes.
Does NFPA 921 speak to that?
Yes.
The large print.
Avoiding presumption. Does NFPA, when we talk about avoiding, what happened? When we talk about avoiding presumption, no specific hypothesis can be reasonably formed or tested until some data have been collected, right?
Correct.
Because how does that tie into the scientific method?
Well, scientific method says that you have to collect data, analyze the data, test your data, and formulate hypotheses. If you don't have all the data, how can you possibly do that?
In the second section, all hypotheses should be subject to rigorous testing through the scientific method. What do you understand to be rigorous testing?
Rigorous testing is, if you can, try to recreate what you believe happened and do it with physical evidence, deductive reasoning, recreate. So sometimes you can't, for sure. But if there's something that you can do, you want to make sure that you do everything you can to establish that it is right or wrong. You try to disprove whatever you believe it happened. If you can't disprove that, you have all these other potential hypotheses. If you can disprove, you can eliminate many of them and only have one you can't disprove, then you actually have a cause. But if you have more than one, you can't.
You heard Mr. Leroy testify. You sat in on his testimony, right?
I did.
And you actually read his transcript from his testimony.
I did.
All right. You heard him say you're trying to prove and disprove a hypothesis. Do you agree with that?
No.
Why not?
Well, simply because how can you prove and disprove to start with? You can't do both. If you do both in the same particular scenario, you're trying to collect data and analyze and come to a hypothesis. The idea is if you can't disprove it, then that must be a valid hypothesis.
And NFPA 921 speaks to whether trying to disprove or prove in the scientific method?
Yes.
Is this the section you're referring to, 19.6.4? When testing a hypothesis, the investigator should attempt to disprove rather than confirm the hypothesis.
That's correct.
Right. And as we were talking about documentation and the importance of documentation, does NFPA 921 speak to that?
It does.
16.1.2,
Yes.
thorough and accurate documentation of the investigation is critical because compilation of factual data is necessary to support and verify investigative opinions and conclusions. How does that affect you in your role? You come in 15 years after a fire inspection, the evidence isn't there, the house isn't there anymore. What's the importance of documentation to you?
Well, it also says in NFPA 921 that when you conduct a fire scene investigation, you have to be able to preserve that investigation, whether you call somebody in before you do any movement and have that other person come in and look at it with you, or you photograph, videograph, diagram, and preserve it as you went along. Like, for example, to do the excavation of debris. You don't just take one picture before you move it and one picture after. It's an archaeological dig, and you need to document and preserve every aspect of that. Every piece of evidence you find, whether it's of value or not, you have to record it so somebody else can take that same information and they evaluate it.
Okay. Now let's talk about what Mr. Leroy saw at his inspection. Do you recall, this is photograph 62 from Mr. Leroy's photographs. This is what would have been the basement that he said the first floor dropped into?
Yes.
Okay. And can you see the remnants of a basement fireplace?
I'm going to grab the pictures that correspond to that. I'm sorry for having to do this, but my eyesight's pretty good, but what I see in this picture is some of the flue vents for the chimney chases.
That would be
I think
this?
that, yes, and I think that is the fireplace right behind it.
And right here where I'm pointing, would that be the fireplace?
That's the fireplace for the basement.
In the
yes.
basement?
Yes, okay.
So this is the 2 feet of rubble he was talking about throughout. Do you remember how big he said the living room was?
Yes,
About the size of this whole area of the courtroom?
yes.
Okay.
I was at the scene, but there was nothing there. You know, I went there years later, so I know the dimensions, and I couldn't pinpoint obviously where a living room or any other rooms were, but I agree with that's approximately what it was, and we had diagrams to show that too.
Okay. And then you've seen Mr. McHugh's photographs that we showed?
I did.
I'm going to show you what Mr. McHugh had said was the amount of excavation that, or documents of the living room. Again, that's all the rubble that was down there.
Yes,
Did you have any, do you remember when Mr. McHugh got there?
he was there on a day or so after the fire, I believe.
2 days.
10th, maybe 11th.
Okay.
Well, actually, it's on his pictures. He
And
was
you
there
saw,
twice.
you saw Mr. Shinsky's photographs, correct?
Yes,
That would be the rear of the house after Mr. Leroy had been there
yes,
and told us that he excavated a big pile that was 7 feet high. You remember that?
yes.
Okay. This is Mr. Shinsky's photograph. Did that play a factor into whether or not Mr. Leroy actually did what he said he did?
Well, it certainly confirmed he didn't. There was debris that he removed. He removed, obviously, the vent pipes that were central to that area, that space. And he also moved remnants of furniture, springs, and some debris. But even after that, yes, that's some of the, I think there's a vent, or the cap, and a few other things from one of the flues. There was triple flue there. There was one for the furnace, one each for the fireplaces. So there was a lot of piping there. And he removed some of it. But there are photographs that show after that there was still a bunch of debris, or that pictures that he even took himself to show there was a pile of debris still there.
I want to discuss some of Mr. Shinsky's photographs. Does Mr. Shinsky's, you reviewed his excavation and his photographs?
I did.
Does it comport more with what 921 calls for in terms of how you actually excavate something?
Yes.
All right, if I can, Your Honor, we've admitted as Exhibit I the photographs of Mr. Shinsky. I'd just like to publish them as we go along. I know I brought enough for the whole class last week. I hope I have enough for the whole class this week. Let me share. The socks in the car. This first photograph, what does this depict to you compared to what it would have been when Mr. Leroy left the place?
Well, this one certainly shows that they had an excavator or some mechanical equipment to help. But they take the walls down, and you can see them laying around the outside perimeter of the house. Twofold, one for safety, and the other to examine what the remains were. How, sometimes they call it, if you just do it on a piece of paper, a blowout diagram. You put the walls on each side where you could, what's remaining, and you mark those says, wall north, south, and west, and east, and then show what's on the interior. Let's say it's for
Let's talk
safety.
about-
It's for safety.
Let's talk about the second photograph. Does that show more of Mr. Shinsky and what he was doing in terms of taking the walls down?
Yes, it's a closer view, and now you see people inside where they now can feel safe. There's something not going to fall on them.
Showing you what was marked as Exhibit O, floor plan of the first floor. We can kind of get a reference. Do you see this back area? We'll talk about it more on other pictures. You see that back area that's cleared out?
Yes.
Does that correspond to where the bay window would have been?
From this angle, that's pretty much the best you can get, but yes, it's in the northwest corner of that room that you circled. That's probably better, yes.
Okay, and this is just more of an excavation as it's supposed to be done?
Yes. There's still debris on the floor within that room that Mr. Leroy is supposed to have
I'm on
excavated.
photograph number 5, and they're base numbered. We can see this excavator up at the top.
Yes.
Is an excavator appropriate for an excavation?
Yes, there's a variety of ways that you've got to be careful about using them, but absolutely.
Okay. As you look at the photograph on 5, can you see this man who's on the right over here?
I do.
All right, the area behind him, would that represent the living room?
Yes,
From the
that's the
basement?
area, that's the area that we're speaking of, that's in the darker color.
All right, so the bay window that's at the bottom would have already been knocked out by the excavators.
Yes.
So this represents the rubble on the first floor, which would have been the living room as it fell into the basement?
Yes.
Right. And do you remember what Mr. Leroy said about how he cleared out the basement?
He said, he said he did it, but obviously he didn't.
Photograph 10 is just a photograph of what?
That's the electrical distribution panel that's obviously been involved in a fire with wires down below it that are bare copper conductors that have burned off.
Okay. Is that something you have to consider? We'll talk about it more in detail, but is that something you have to consider in terms of trying to find out what happened in the fire, what caused the fire?
Your Honor, can we approach?
I then want to talk to you about some of the photographs. This is 13 from Mr. Shinsky's photographs of the 15th. What does that show you?
That shows some of the debris that was removed, more than likely 75% by excavator and placed according.
Speculating as the number 75% by excavator. I don't think he's capable of saying that, Your Honor.
These are heavy pieces of evidence. A human being couldn't do it. He's been on thousands of excavations. Thousands. Thank you.
And others were moved by hand, the smaller objects.
Yeah.
But in a placement such as they can look at them and define where they may have been and try to see what they may or may not have to do with the relationship of fire cause, or not only fire cause, but fire load.
More evidence of what?
Examining pieces of the appliance here to look at it to see if it could be ascertained whether there were something to do with the cause or just affected by the fire.
And in terms of laying it out and looking at the pieces individually, what step to the scientific method does that go to?
That would be, finding the evidence and then looking at it. You're collecting the data, which is that's some of the data, and then you're analyzing that data by putting it out and checking to see if you can make a hypothesis about each and every one of these pieces of equipment.
Okay. This last picture, 17. What does this show you in terms of how one excavates and the proper way to do something?
The investigator is isolating, for example, in this case, the flue pipes, laying them out in, I won't say in order, laying out and seeing if they can determine a potential order, but as I said, there's 3 chimney chases, and you try to match up oxidation, different things on the flue pipes to see if you can match them all up, but some were smashed as a result of the collapse of the building. And then you've got other appliances again, furniture, that is examined and trying to determine what value they have, as I said, either cause, origin, or fire load.
In terms of fires, obviously every fire can be different. Big fires, small fires, dumpsters, whatever, right?
Right, they're all uniquely different, sometimes to a great degree and sometimes to a small degree.
Are there occasions, or frequent occasions, where the damage is just too much where you have what's called a total burn?
Well, total burn is like the word says, total, but a burn that is very extensive with collapse of floors, roofs, and all that is a very difficult investigation.
And why is that?
Because much of the items that have been consumed in the fire, much of it is because there is such a wide area that you can't even find the origin.
Does NFPA speak to that, NFPA 921?
It does.
Well, I'll show you this section, 18.8, is that what you're talking about?
That's the one I have right in front of me, yes.
Yes?
Yes.
All right. What that document says is a conclusion of the origin investigation can be the identification of a volume of space too large to identify causal factors or no practical boundaries can be established around the volume of the origin, right?
Correct.
All you folks are taught that?
Yes.
You tested things like that?
Yes.
And I'm sure you've taught it to firefighters.
Yes.
Okay. In this particular case, Mr. Leroy defines an area of origin, as we had talked about 20 feet by 20 feet. Is that, in your opinion, a reasonable area of origin?
It is not.
Why not?
Because as this section says in practical experience, the book talks about an area of origin and a point of origin. Sometimes you actually do have a point of origin, but most of the time you do have an area. But that area consists of a very much smaller diameter or perimeter.
Give us an example.
Fire starts in a living room. It consumes many of the contents in the living room, flashes over, but by examination of each piece of the evidence there, you can get down to maybe a sofa where somebody was carelessly smoking, or a lightweight electrical cord in the floor that may have been the cause of the fire. But you have to do that, as it says, painstakingly, hard and dirty.
Okay. Is there any sense of embarrassment if you say the area is too big, the damage is too much? I have to say it's undetermined where the fire started.
No.
Let's talk about the area of origin as one, the living room, and then two, you reviewed Mr. Leroy's work. Did he adequately consider alternate hypotheses in terms of the area of origin?
He did.
Why not?
I'm sorry, maybe I misunderstood the question.
Yes, did he adequately consider anything else other than the living room?
He didn't adequately, but he did consider other hypotheses.
Okay. Did you, as you looked at the file, see other areas of plausible origins of the fire?
I do.
Give me an example of one.
The most reasonable one is the fire in the chimney chase.
And we'll talk about that
I think we're talking about cause, not area of origin.
no, we're talking about the area of origin of a fire in the chimney chase.
All hours, examination.
You have to get, thank you. Do you have to get to origin before you can get to a cause?
Yes,
Why?
because if you have the wrong origin, you couldn't possibly have the right cause.
Okay. In terms of analyzing the chimney chase, what did you look at?
I looked at photographs and actually Mr. Leroy's trial testimony in this case, where he said everything I would have said to say the chimney chase is the most probable cause, or possible cause. I won't say that. He had information that he said exactly like I would have said to say this is something that we have to consider.
Okay. Did you look at, for example, photographs of how the fire was spreading from the in-car video?
Yes.
And witness statements?
Yes.
From the on-scene folks?
Yes.
All right. I'll show you one of the prosecution's photographs from the in-car video, and what does that describe to you in looking at the house?
That's from a dash cam from one of the responding sheriff's officers. And the fire is in the back of the house, burning in the upper portions, and the smoke's coming out from that back central section.
Okay. Do you remember witness statements saying they saw flames coming through the roof?
Yes,
Okay, would that be consistent with the chimney chase fire?
yes,
Did you also look at Mr. Leroy's pictures?
I did.
I'm going to show you a photograph, and you tell me if that helps give you evidence or data to consider in a chimney chase fire as another point of origin or area of origin.
Yes.
You tell me what we're looking at and where you want me to point.
If you can point toward the second or the first floor fireplace, which is almost dead central in the picture. Right
Here?
there, yes.
I'll back that up. Go ahead.
Okay. The roof is collapsed behind there. behind the chimney, and there's almost nothing else left behind the fireplace where the chimney chase would be.
Tell us, what is a chimney chase?
Chimney chase is a facade that goes around the flue vents, and it's supposed to be a certain distance away from the flue vents. There's not supposed to be anything in direct contact, but that's what's directly behind that, the chimney, in that opening where you've got the header and the vertical 2x4s, where Mr. Leroy said, well, that was proof that there was no fire in the fireplace. That really would have had nothing to do with it, because that is a protected area, and there would be no way that it wouldn't burn if everything else burned, except it was protected, and it was insulated, and it was what held that fireplace in check. But I don't believe there was a fireplace fire. I believe if there was anything, it was in the chase, and nothing else above here except minuscule amount of rubble, and the chimney, or the roof failed at that point, which is a good point of reference to find out where something happened.
What causes a chimney chase fire?
A variety of things. The flue vents now are circular. They're not just old brick and stuff like they used to be in
So you saw the aluminum flues.
Yeah, they're not aluminum, but steel.
Steel.
Yeah, stainless steel usually. Some are just plain old.
So what can cause a fire to happen in a chimney chase?
All right, two
With a
things.
flue.
One would be having insulation directly in contact with it. I've had two fires, actually, one was one way, one was the other, just within a couple months apart, a couple of years ago. One, because they were putting blown-in insulation in the roof area, and they were supposed to protect the area with a chimney chase, and they didn't. So while they were doing the insulation, it fell into the chase and was in direct contact. So over time, the insulation materials caught on fire, which caught the chase on fire, which caused the house to burn. But it wasn't nearly as bad as this. I mean, it was very clear that that was the cause. The other cause was the result of the these flue vents are 4 feet long, or 3, whatever the distance is. I think usually 4 feet. Those look shorter to me in the picture, but they are connected. You twist and connect until you get up to the top. Then you put a cap on the top of that.
And that's why it's laid out to analyze whether that could be a cause?
Yes.
But you have a lot of damage to those.
Right, they're too damaged to be, like, say, some were, the ones that Leroy took out, some of them were actually almost flattened. I think he even mentioned that in his report or in his testimony. And those you wouldn't be able to tell. But in the other instance, the chimney came down in whole, the whole thing was on the side of the house, and everything, what remains of the chase and the flue came down, so we were able to put it all together, and there was a gap where one was
Objection, Your Honor. He's never held any of this evidence. He can't talk about putting things together. How is he testifying to this?
Your Honor, he's an expert who's done thousands of investigations, and including chimney fires, and he's talking about how you go about analyzing the evidence, the data. This is part of the scientific method.
But he's talking about, we put this together. He's never
He didn't
touched
say
this.
we.
How is he testifying?
I'll allow him to re-answer the question. I didn't
Yes.
hear what you heard, Mr. Blair, but
Thank
Mr.
you.
Miller?
Now, I want to show you, Mr. Trinkle,
Yes,
I want to show you Mr. Leroy's photographs, his own photograph of what he took out of the house.
yes.
One, is this the piece that you're talking about that was flattened?
It may be, I'm sure there were more than one, but, yeah.
And then, does this look like how a proper excavation would lay out evidence?
No.
So do you have an opinion of whether you can rule out a chimney fire, a chimney chase, as being the area of origin?
Yes,
What is that opinion?
you cannot.
And what does that say in terms of Mr. Leroy's conclusions as far as your ability to have confidence in them?
You can't have any confidence in them, but I was amazed when I heard him say, and then it's in his, in the transcript, that he explained everything I just explained, basically, and how that could happen.
And then rule it out with what? Any analysis?
He said it wasn't low enough. I think, that might be misquoting, but it was up high, and he explained how the fire would travel upward in the chase from wherever the fault was. But he doesn't know where that fault was, nor do I.
If you had a chimney chase fire, could it explain a sudden burst of flame?
Absolutely.
How?
Well, the chimney chase is confined, it's burning what's inside, but it's eroding the OSB or whatever, siding they had on that chase, and it's going to eventually go to other areas. That's when you see the whole house is burned down away in the backside of that where the chimney chase was.
Okay. Now let's talk about Mr. Leroy's opinions of causation, how the fire started. Does NFPA 921 give us guidance on that?
Yes.
I showed this to Mr. Leroy. The cause factors for a fire.
19.1.1?
Correct.
Okay.
The determination of a fire cause requires the identification of those factors that were necessary for the fire to have occurred. Those factors include the presence of a competent ignition source.
Your Honor, I'm going to object. I think he can maybe ask the witness to talk about it, but he's literally testifying from the book.
I'm not testifying, I'm just reading what this says.
It
And I
is
apologize,
getting
I
to
should
the
have
point
blacked
of
it.
testimony, so perhaps rephrase the question.
Tell us what 3 factors are necessary, required to have a fire cause.
Certainly the competent ignition source, the type and fuel first ignited, and what brought them together.
Okay. Does it also speak, NFPA 921, as to whether or not you can get away with less than all 3?
It says you can't.
19.4.4.1, does that speak to that?
Yes,
Can you read that?
I can, particularly it's in front of me. Even though I don't need glasses yet, it helps.
Can you read that to us?
It says simply identifying a fuel or ignition source by itself does not and cannot describe how a fire came to be.
In other words, 1 and 2 by themselves don't count.
No,
We're going to talk about how Mr. Leroy got to his open flame and gasoline issues, but do you remember him testifying about number 3, step 3,
yes,
and how he couldn't identify how the fire 1 and 2 got together?
I do recall that, yes.
What does that mean in terms of being able to identify how the fire started, the cause?
It means he can't, and he didn't.
What does that tell you in terms of your confidence in his opinion that he actually identified the cause of the fire?
Well, I guess if I put a percentage on it, it'd be 0.
Let's talk about Mr. Leroy's identification of the origin and being in the living room, but how he used Ms. Stermer's testimony to help solidify that basis. You remember him talking about that?
Yes,
Okay. What's the one thing that you found consistent in every one of Linda Stermer's statements?
she was downstairs, he was upstairs, or her husband was upstairs.
And then what happened?
She heard the sound, a scream, and ran from the basement upstairs and saw that the fire was in the living room.
Do you recall whether he agreed with me that you can't be in 2 places at one time?
He did.
And what does that tell us about Linda Stermer being in the place where Mr. Leroy thought the fire started at the time the fire started?
Well, we tell you that there's no way she could have been involved in setting
Objection,
fires.
speculation, Your Honor.
Mr. Blair, could you please bring the emotion down?
Sorry.
Thank you.
That caught me off
You
guard.
have an, yes, you have an objection, and what is your objection?
Speculating as to whether or not the defendant could have started the fire. You can't be.
He's testifying that she wasn't in the same place as Todd Stermer when the fire started.
I'm going to sustain that objection.
Do you recall Mr. Leroy agreeing with me you can't be in 2 places at one time?
Yes,
And that Mr. Stermer was by himself when he got caught on fire?
yes.
Let's do a hypothesis. Here's a hypothesis. Linda Stermer was upstairs with Todd Stermer when the fire started. Do you have evidence that would support that or disagree with that?
Evidence to support it.
You have evidence that Linda Stermer was in the basement.
Yes,
So you can rule out the hypothesis that she was upstairs when the fire started,
yes,
right? That's according to the data that you have, and that's the only consistent data you have, right?
yes.
Do you remember that Mr. Leroy found that evidence to be reliable?
I do recall he did.
In terms of alternate theories, alternate hypotheses, is that important that you have to consider different theories?
Absolutely important.
Why?
If you don't consider all of the other potential theories, then you can't come and render an opinion that there's one and only one reason for this fire to have occurred.
Let's talk about this idea of gasoline on the sweatpants. And first of all, why don't we do this? Let's talk about fire propagation. Can you tell us what factors are involved in fire propagation? Because you understood that one of the things Mr. Leroy talked about was this was a fast fire.
Yes, I believe that definitions of different kinds of fires would be a friendly fire, a hostile fire. Friendly fires don't get out of control, don't hurt anybody. We enjoy them, fireplace or campfire or cooking. So, on the other hand, when you say a hostile fire or a fast fire, that connotes that you can tell the speed of a fire by looking at it or not considering anything else.
Does 921 give guidance on whether you should be considering that? Calling things fast, abnormally fast?
It does.
Section 23.7.2 speaks to that, doesn't it?
I think it's stuck in the middle. Excuse me. Yes.
And what does that say?
It says, what the investigator may consider as excessive, unnatural, or abnormal can only occur in an accidental, can actually occur in an accidental fire, excuse me, depending on the geometry of the space, the fuel characteristics, and the ventilation of the compartment.
Tell us a little bit about that, then I want to show a video that you made. But tell us about the factors that go into it: compartment, fuel load, ventilation.
Okay. A fire in a accidental scenario will start, it's called the incipient stage, a very small stage of the fire. It will progress from that point and continue to progress depending on the fuel load and the ventilation.
Ventilation is very important.
Yes,
And fuel, fuel, do we think of it as maybe gas, oil, that kind of thing? Is that what fuel is considered?
sorry, I missed that, apologize.
To a fire investigator, what is fuel?
Fuel is anything that burns. Anything in this room, almost everything will burn. You know, steel, even how they make tires and things by melting steel and reforming it. But in a situation like we're normally used to, wood products, plastic products, cellulosic materials, and, flammable and volatile materials.
And when windows burst open in a fire, does that help fuel a fire?
It does,
Why?
because now more air and oxygen is let in.
You have a video that you made, what year?
30 years ago, I think, 1993.
And what is that intended to demonstrate?
That was intended to demonstrate, at that time, a specific fire, but it also was intended to show how a fire without any kind of fuel, like liquid potential that can ignite, ignitable liquids they call it now, was not involved.
And what's it intended to talk about in terms of fire propagation?
To show how heat and smoke rise, which is natural, and the fire will continue to burn until there's no more fuel left, or no more oxygen, or somebody extinguishes it.
Were you considering, too, the time duration of how quickly a fire can develop with just accidental cause?
Yes, there's all kind of national and other videos that show, a fire can go to flash over from a natural fire in 2 minutes, 3 minutes.
Is it intended to demonstrate principles?
Yes,
Your Honor, move for the admission of Exhibit JJ, a demonstrative exhibit.
Mr. Blair?
Other than the limiting instruction I'm going to ask the court to give regarding this exhibit, I have no objection.
Okay, thank you. Do you want me to provide that instruction now, counsel? Okay. Jury, I have an instruction for you. This video is being admitted only to illustrate this witness's testimony. The parties agree that the video is not in any way a recreation of the events at issue in this trial. You may only consider this video to help you understand and evaluate the witness's testimony as it relates to the speed at which a fire might grow and propagate in the absence of liquid accelerants under certain conditions. Counsel
Thank you, Your Honor.
satisfied with that instruction?
That's fine.
Mr. Blair?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Yes, what,
JJ?
JJ? Court will receive Exhibit JJ into evidence.
And you can kind of describe for us what we're seeing.
it's okay.
Yes.
Okay, right now, in that cardboard box, there's crumbled paper product. It was lit with a match. And there's nothing else to influence its growth outside of, the configuration of the structure and the fuel load.
And you started at 2:04 p.m.?
It says it on that one, I'm not sure the other, there are two camcorders videoing this, and I don't know if the other one says the same thing. I think it does, yes. We switched from this camera after about a minute to the camera on the other side.
Oh, jury, is this board in your way? Better? Okay, thank you.
This is just switching the cameras.
It was getting hot and they were moving it back, the camera.
You were actually present at this video?
Yes. It's burning a building inside my building, probably not the smartest thing to do.
And what is this showing us right here when it hits the ceiling?
Heat and smoke, fire, go to the, something that stops it from going straight up, a horizontal surface being the ceiling, and then it spreads out in all directions and continues to burn until the fuel is expended.
And this is in an enclosed space?
It's not totally enclosed. It's, as I said, I had a fire truck, and I had a fire truck, or I had a way to put the fire out, but it's in a big warehouse, my office, where my office was, at a 30-foot ceiling, so this is only an 8-foot ceiling, so we're not going to let it get beyond where it should. But to answer your question, there's sufficient fuel, sufficient oxygen to keep the fire going until we extinguished it.
And this is the speed of the fire?
Yes, and that's into 3 minutes, I think.
Right, that's only about 3 minutes into the fire?
Yes. And if everything was, all what it's going through is non-combustible, double-thick drywall. So we had plenty of time to let it burn and not have to worry about it going through into the rest of my building. We had 2 hallways to make it, so we had sufficient room for it to spread, and then the last one, where the last hallway goes right out to a 16-foot overhead commercial door.
It's only about 4 minutes in, 2:07?
Yes. And there's the firefighter's got his full gear on, including a Nomex headgear and a self-contained breathing apparatus. And when they pulled back, there was no fire anywhere near them. It was just a small fire, just to show you how convected and radiated heat transfer can give you some serious burns. So they were protected, and they got out before it got worse.
Okay. That's the end of that video. You illustrated that to show how fast fire can propagate even without any liquid accelerant or anything.
Yes.
Now, you also showed us, that fire is going pretty crazy in a few minutes. You've been in plenty of fires as a firefighter. Is it as dangerous as it gets?
Yes, and that one's controlled, so everybody knew it was going to happen, and they knew there's no more fuel to ignite to hurt them, and they had a fire hose line right there from a fire truck. But when
let me address this. When you go through your training, is it so that you know how to act in a fire where it's
yes,
you're an inferno?
Yes, it's your job to put that out no matter what. People always think you see people running away and crazy firemen running in. You have to know what you're doing to do that.
What are the things you're combating in terms of critical stress and the way the body reacts?
Well, certainly your heart's pumping more than it would normally. You're excited, and you are under a lot of stress because a lot of times we come to homes, we don't know if there's anybody in there. We always treat the fires as there is somebody there.
You've learned about critical stress factors that the body goes through?
I'm going to object, Your Honor. I think this is outside his area of expertise.
Goes through its training as a firefighter. That's why they do repetitive training.
It's getting to be medical.
No?
If you stay away from any medical opinion, it's fine.
I'm not asking for opinions. You have received training on how the body reacts in critical stress situations, right?
Yes.
And those symptoms include what?
I'm going to object, Your Honor, that he's
Part of his
received
training.
training. It doesn't mean he's an expert on giving an opinion to a jury about what it
Maybe
might be.
lay more foundation of what
Sure.
the training was.
Tell us where your training was, what your training was, and what kind of subject matters you covered with respect to how a body might react in critical stress.
Well, the first 320 hours that we had were classroom training in all aspects of fire and, as you said, what we go through as a firefighter, and to make sure we were able to cope with that.
And what are the things you're trying to cope with and fight against, which is how your training is going to help you?
Well, it's sort of like muscle memory. When you're doing what you're doing, and you do it over and over and over again, and you rely on the people you're working with to have that same feeling that you do. When you're going in with somebody, that we always had a thing called 2 in, 2 out, that we would go in together as a team. And if we were not coming out, both of us were not coming out. If we got out, both of us were going to get out. And so in that process, the things you're going to be dealing with. Back in my day, we didn't have self-contained breathing apparatuses, I shouldn't say in my day, in the beginning of my tenure.
Mr. Trenkel, with respect to critical stress symptoms, did you learn things like tunnel vision?
Yes.
Describe for us, please, the other body symptoms that you learned to prepare against with training.
Object is to relevance, Your Honor. I don't know how this is even relevant.
Well, can I explain the relevance, since he made an objection?
I think, is it relating to Ms. Stermer? Is that?
Yes,
where you're going?
these folks train for critical stress. A middle-aged woman does not train for critical stress. That's how it's relevant.
We're providing facts into the record here. I'm just concerned about what's going on in front of the jury with some of these statements that are being made. But in addition, he's not an expert on critical stress. And how a layperson, he's a firefighter, he's talking about a firefighter, not how a layperson might perceive it.
It's based on his training.
Testify as to firefighters
Yes.
and their stress levels and what he's learned through his training, but
Right.
not laypersons.
I didn't ask what a layperson, I just asked, what symptoms have you understood through your training that you might go through that the training would help? You said tunnel vision.
Right, well, make sure you maintain focus, for sure, what you're doing, and not panic. I'm not sure the whole program that you're wanting me to tell you, but if you can maybe clarify.
Well, have you learned that you lose your fine motor skills?
Yes,
All right, that's why people fumble with their keys in a high stressful situation.
yes.
It's leading and now it's
Thank you.
outside the scope, I'll sustain.
We'll go to something here. The gas on the sweatpants we were talking about. Under the scientific method, you remember that Mr. Leroy arrived on the scene 3 hours after,
Yes,
and that Mr. Stermer was at some point outside the house.
he was.
Do you have some understanding of how Mr. Stermer got from the house to where he was initially found and then transported?
From the house to where he was initially found, no, but from the movement afterward, yes.
And the movements afterward included, first of all, Mr. Matheny putting clothes on him.
Clothing being placed on him, Mrs. Stermer was on top of him, then she allowed Mr. Matheny, or not allowed, Mr. Matheny did put a bunch of things on him, but then there was also another movement.
And that other movement involved what?
I don't know if it was the fire chief or somebody else, there was somebody to assist to lift Mr. Stermer and put him into a little boat and then move him farther away from the actual burning building because there was fear of there was a 220-gallon fuel oil tank right next to the house, and he wasn't too far from that, so they moved him away.
And as a fire origin and cause expert, you remember Mr. Leroy, 3 hours later, said he smelled gasoline?
Yes.
Or he smelled something fuel and it turned out to be positive gasoline on the sweatpants?
Yes,
Do you have to, as a scientific person under the scientific method, have to rule out how that gas could have gotten on the sweatpants?
absolutely.
And one of the things you have to rule out is, was there, do you understand?
It's sustained, it's leading.
Okay, what one of the things are in terms of the boat transfer?
Objection leading, Your Honor. It's still leading witness.
I will. Sir, tell us, if you're the fire origin and cause investigator, what you need to consider in terms of the transfer going back from where Mr. Leroy found him to the house.
I would have to consider, if anything, in that transfer of movement from where he was lying to where he was put in the boat and to where his final destination was, if there was any possibility of any other potential for a gasoline or fuel oil or any other kind of ignitable liquid to have gotten on him. You would have to take the boat, and we use things sometimes like sterile gauze and things like that to get liquid and then take that into evidence and have it go to the laboratory just to check to make sure there wasn't something else. And even on the ground, I would have checked the ground he was on. People are driving back and forth and all that. I don't know what was on the ground that might have been a contaminant. So
What
those are
about-
things you need to think about.
What about talking to witnesses, family members?
Absolutely.
Did you find any evidence that Mr. Leroy did any of that?
He pretty much didn't talk to anybody.
Or wipe anything down?
No,
Am I right?
correct.
All right, in your review of the evidence, did Mr. Leroy even consider collecting data for the boat?
According to what he testified to, he didn't even know a boat existed.
Okay, so according to the scientific method, if you don't collect the data, you can't go through all the other steps, right?
Correct.
And what does that do to your confidence level that he actually ruled out that particular alternate hypothesis?
Back to percentage zero.
Now, would you also have to consider maybe possible contamination?
Yes.
How would you consider that? And what are you talking about?
Well, we also know that Mr. Matheny placed clothing and other items on Mr. Leroy for a variety of reasons. He's pretty well naked on the ground and it's winter, and that Mr. Matheny had an occupation where he came into contact with flammable and ignitable liquids.
And what would you have to do in order to determine that maybe contamination caused it?
Well, if you were the person taking the evidence, each one should have been analyzed separately. But to compound the problem, these things were placed into the body bag together and were transported, and then each one were positive for slight residue of gasoline.
Objection. He can't testify as to what the level of residue was, Your Honor. He said slight. He can't do that.
I'll allow you to cross-examine on that point.
Thank you. You do know what the threshold that Mr. Ernst said the machine was?
Yes,
.0005,
correct,
4 zeros and 5.
right.
Now, one of the things that Mr. Leroy said, he smelled the gas 3 hours before. Do you have to consider and collect evidence about maybe what did people smell when they were the first people on the scene?
Yes, absolutely, and I think during the course of time, he did find that out.
Did you see where he did not interview Mr. Matheny
Yes, he did not.
and he didn't interview Ms. Calhoun
He did not,
and he didn't interview Mr. Masali?
no.
All right. If they have testified in this trial that they didn't smell anything and they were the first 3 people there, would that be something you'd have to consider in terms of whether you could rule out maybe there was contamination, maybe there was something else?
That's why I talked to them.
Okay. And would you also then, well, let me ask you this. Mr. Leroy says it doesn't matter what they say. Is that appropriate?
Selective choice of who you want to interview and believe, I guess, I would say was wrong.
Okay. Does NFPA 921 speak to that in terms of confirmation bias?
Yes.
Tell us what confirmation bias is.
Confirmation bias is when you already have a preconceived idea that what happened and you want to confirm that with the evidence, and so it comes to fit your idea of what happened.
Okay. Confirmation bias described in NFPA 921, section 4.3.10. Can you read that for us?
Somehow we got things on the place. Maybe I can read it from up there. Confirmation bias occurs when the investigator relies exclusively on data that supports the hypotheses and fails to look for, ignores, or dismisses contradictory or non-supporting data.
And then it continues, does it not?
Failure to consider alternate or opposing hypotheses or prematurely discounting seemingly contradictory data without appropriate analysis can result in incorrect conclusions.
Okay.
Sorry, it took me so long. Maybe I do need glasses.
Best, from the evidence that you have reviewed, does that fit into what Mr. Leroy did in terms of contradictory data?
He did not do anything to do that.
Would you say that that fits the definition of confirmation bias, what Mr. Leroy did?
Yes.
And what does that do for your confidence level in his opinion that the gasoline on the sweatpants related to the house as opposed to anything afterwards?
There is no confidence.
If there is a theory that Mr. Stermer was set on fire with gasoline, do you remember what Mr. Leroy said in terms of the evidence of any gasoline in the house?
He opined that through extrapolating the gas that was detected on his sweatpants, confirmed there was gasoline inside the living room.
And what is that in terms of scientific certainty versus speculation?
All speculation.
And what is speculation in terms of an expert? Is that appropriate?
It is not.
Why not?
Sorry. Person who is doing a scientifically proper investigation is trying to disprove those different hypotheses, and there was nothing that Mr. Leroy did to show that there was an intentionally set incendiary fire.
And do you recall what he said where he admitted there's no evidence of gasoline in the house other than sweatpants on testing positive?
Yes.
Do you have experience, sir, in your vast career with what symptoms somebody might show if they were set on fire and inhaled gas,
Objection, Your Honor.
inhaled
He is
fire?
not a pathologist. He cannot give this opinion.
This isn't, I asked him for his experience with being a fire and origin and cause, attending autopsies, and having experience seeing people who've been caught on fire and what symptoms they exhibited on autopsy. That is absolutely within his background. It's based on his experience.
How a person may react when set on fire, he's not capable of doing that. He's not a pathologist.
I'm not talking about-
He's a fire investigator, not somebody trained in human mechanics, dynamics, anything to do with pathology, how the human body, organ systems. There's just no way.
Your Honor, He has experience with autopsies, what he's observed for people in fire investigations where he has actually investigated people who have been caught on fire and inhaled fire and what that exhibits. That's based on his experience. He doesn't have to be a medical doctor. These are his observations.
I'm going to sustain the objection. I think it is outside the scope of his area of expertise.
The gasoline on sweatpants, we talked about that and ruling out other things. Do you have, I think you didn't give us the opinion on whether that's reliable, that gasoline on the sweatpants has anything to do with this case.
I'm objecting, I'd like to ask the answer.
That hasn't been asked.
How about we stop now and take our morning break?
How about an answer to the question?
It's been asked and answered, so we can move on when we get back. Okay, jury, remember your rules. No discussion of the case or looking at social media or media. We'll make it about 15 minutes again.
All right, so just gonna see if there's anything happening during the after the jury is gone. Yeah, he's gonna go on a timeout. The judge had enough, absolutely. Because now I was just asking Lois, because I was thinking of doing the BK hearing on Laurie's.
Okay, counsel, jury has left. Any matters to address in the break?
No, Your Honor.
No? Okay, thank you.
Okay, we can zoom the break, but while I'm zooming the break, I was gonna say, because if it is like between an hour and a half, we can do BK's hearing, because I want to watch it, and I'm gonna be honest, I'm not gonna probably be watching if I'm on my own. So that's why I wanted to know how long it is, because if it is between an hour and a half, we might be able to do it during Dingy's break, Laurie's break, and we're only 20 minutes behind, so that is not bad. We've done pretty well, everybody.
Back on the record in the case of People versus Linda Stermer. Any matters to address before we bring in the jury?
Yes, Your Honor, we approach to address it.
You may.
Of course, they have something to address and something to approach, so let's skip that part again.
Thank you. Mr. Treckle, I just wanted to make sure I summarize when we're talking about the excavation. Just to put a bow on it, do you have an opinion whether Mr. Leroy did what he said he did?
Objection, ask the answer.
Your Honor, we're
That
summarizing.
you haven't already covered?
Just summarizing one point, that's all.
Why don't you be specific about what he did what?
In terms of the excavation, do you have an opinion that he actually did that?
Objection, ask the answer, Your Honor.
Summarizing it.
That part has been asked and answered.
I'm just summarizing, Your Honor.
Okay, we don't need the summary.
Right.
Thank you.
Mr. Leroy said in his testimony that gasoline can completely be burned up, which is why there's no evidence, zero, of gasoline in his area of origin, the living room. Is that possible?
Possible, but highly unlikely, but absolutely you can't say that because he didn't excavate, so how can he find if there was or was not gasoline there? There was no excavation, so there was no evidence taken and no analysis. You can't just arbitrarily say, well, gee, it must have been consumed in the fire when you didn't even try to find it.
Is there evidence in the rubble that you've seen that would suggest that if there was gasoline, it would have been found? Like in terms of how the material is and whatnot?
I say that it would or would not be is dependent upon the fact that somebody actually tried. I have not seen, if you do an excavation and you have other proofs or, data that suggests that there was an accelerant used, that you find it.
Let's talk about the gasoline on the 100% polyester sweatpants. First of all, just in order to set this up, I want you to look at that big binder there.
This one?
You did an examination of all the clothes in this case,
I did.
and you saw the clothes that was taken out of, you saw these silver cans and whatnot.
I did.
All right. I want you to look at Exhibit M. All the various pages, and just tell us if that represents the clothes in the package that you saw in your examination.
There are various packages and items that were placed into evidence, which I think are in this room too, that Were recovered, I actually saw most of them, I think, also. Well, no, I didn't see some of these.
Okay, but you saw the evidence and included the sweatpants?
Yes.
All right, move for the admission of Exhibit M. They represent what was presented to us at his inspection. Thank you.
Exhibit M? Did you say M as in mother? Okay, got it.
Mary. Thank you. I want to have you take a look at a couple of pictures from Exhibit M representing the sweatpants. Are those the sweatpants that you saw?
They appear to be.
Okay. And then this, do you have an understanding of the material that the sweatpants was made out of?
Yes, I do.
100% polyester?
Yes,
Okay. Did you obtain some 100% polyester sweatpants?
I did.
Okay. Did you run a video of a test of an exemplar
Yes,
with and without gasoline?
yes,
Did you bring a pair of the exemplar 100% polyester sweatpants with you?
I did.
Can you show that to the jury? And I'd like to move for the admission of Exhibit Q.
They're in this bag, don't you take them out?
I don't think,
As long as the court reads the cautionary instruction.
Thank you. Do you want me to read it now?
Yes,
or-
please.
Right, it's a good time to read it?
let me set a foundation of the
Okay.
video. The video, you did a video showing ignition of 100% polyester sweatpants with and without gasoline.
Yes,
And how much gasoline did you use?
2 ounces.
Okay. What was it intended to show?
It's intended to show the difference between a fire that is accelerated in the presence of gasoline in the incipient stages, well, it doesn't really ever have an incipient stage, to showing that with a match, our lighter polyester resists burning. If it does, it starts melting as opposed to burning.
Okay. You can go ahead and read the instruction, Your Honor.
I will admit the video into
Yes, and let me
evidence.
just formally move for the admission of Exhibits R and S. R without the gasoline, S with the gasoline.
R and S, Mr. Blair, any objection then? I'm going to read the
No.
instruction. Okay. Jury, an instruction for you. This video is being admitted only to illustrate the witness's testimony. The parties agree that the video is not in any way a recreation of the events at issue in this trial. You may only consider this video to help you understand, well, I think there's two, right? 2 videos here. To help you understand and evaluate the witness's testimony as it relates to how polyester clothing might burn when doused with 2 ounces of gasoline versus how it might burn in the absence of any gasoline. Satisfied?
There was an instruction about the exemplar sweatpants as well.
We had one sentence.
Oh, that's the 2-sentence one. Read one of you, did you email it?
I did.
Okay, another instruction, jury. The sweatpants you will see in the video are not the same pair of sweatpants involved in this case. They are an exemplar pair of 100% polyester sweatpants, okay? Satisfied, counsel?
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you.
We're going to show
I think we're admitting all.
R and S.
R and S. And
Thank
yeah,
you.
what happened to Q? Q, yours.
Oh, Q, I'm sorry, yes,
Okay,
Q
Q
is the
did.
exemplar.
Okay, and you're good, Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Okay, we'll admit those.
We'll show Exhibit R without the sweatpants first. Without the gasoline. Okay. Now I'm going to show Exhibit S And tell us what you did.
I took a 4-ounce metal measuring cup, and I filled it half full with 2 ounces of gasoline. And then pants, same situation. And I threw it at it, backed up, and then threw a match.
Okay.
And ignited it. Can I make a comment, Your Honor? Well, I need the picture on there to do it.
You can illustrate what we're talking about.
Well, what I want to do is let the jury see the darkened color by the liquid, and then see that that stays last thing to burn, because it was still liquid,
And you can see it, what is it doing right now? It's burning and doing what?
and melting and falling to the ground. But I just want, you could see right in the beginning of the picture that when I threw the match, the liquid didn't ignite, everything around it ignited, and that's what I wanted them to see. That would be the first seconds of the video. And as it's continuing now, it's just dripping and burning because of the presence of the vapors of gasoline. Otherwise, it wouldn't do any of that.
You're showing the pants, but also is the waistband burning?
Yes, the one that's still hanging, on the post, what is really starting to burn is the waistband, because that's not polyester. It's a stretching material that is not polyester. So it keeps burning and keeps the other heat enough to have the pants still sort of stay lit.
Okay. Let's talk about Mr. Leroy's opinion that there was an open flame to gasoline, okay?
No, okay.
Which was the open flame was what he considered an ignition source, remember that?
Yes,
And the gasoline, despite there being no gasoline in the area of origin, right?
correct.
Okay. Does NFPA talk about that whole concept? First of all, there was no evidence, or did you find any evidence of an ignition source in anything he did?
No,
So what did he do, make one up?
with the evidence he had, he would have.
Speculation, Your Honor, make one up.
I'll sustain that objection. It calls for speculation.
If you're supplying an ignition source where there is no evidence of it, does NFPA 921 speak to that?
Yes,
Now, you said that gives guidance for everything that investigators are supposed to do?
yes.
Yeah. First of all, let's look at 23.2.7.3. You read that?
23.2.7.3, it should be right next to the one I have, but I guess I'll do my best reading again. The investigator strongly cautioned against using subjective opinions to support his incendiary cause determination in the absence of physical evidence.
And 19.6.5 tells us,
Identifying the ignition source for a fire by believing to have eliminated all ignition sources found, known, or suspected to have been present in the area of origin, and for which no supporting evidence exists, is referred to as negative corpus.
and then finally, negative corpus is defined in 4.3.6.1 of NFPA 921. And that tells us what?
Any hypothesis that is incapable of being tested, either physically or analytically, is an invalid hypothesis.
And
A hypothesis developed based on absence of data is an example of a hypothesis that is incapable of being tested.
So NFPA guides us in that, and Mr. Leroy found no evidence of an ignition source, right?
He did not.
And why didn't he? In terms of excavation?
Well, he didn't do any excavation, so how can you find something if you don't look for it?
And a first fuel, can you tell us what first fuel ignited means?
Means the first, well, when we talk about fuel, it's fuel loaded. It doesn't have to be a flammable or combustible liquid. It could be your clothing, could be something that's not a hard piece of wood. Something has to have an ignition that can be a chain of ignitability to start burning everything else. But simple household furnishings and things like that.
So in simple terms, it's the first thing that catches fire?
Yes.
All right. Do you also have to, well, we talked about you have to tell us how the ignition source and the first thing that caught fire actually came together.
Sure, because there's all kind of ignition sources here and all kind of flammable or fuel, but you and I are all fuel, and if there's no ignition source and no, well, say there is an ignition source, say something is burning in this room, but you need to find out how that came together to burn one of us, basically.
Okay. And if you can't find all three things that we talked about, you have to determine, in terms of a cause, you have to say it's what?
It's undetermined. You can't, if you don't have any of those things or part of those things, how can you come to a definitive conclusion and say it is accidental and or incendiary?
And if you don't have a cause of a fire, can you classify a fire?
The only classification comes under classification is undetermined.
Okay. Can you describe the 4 classifications for us?
Well, I usually think there's only 3, but there's one that's called natural, which I always put as accidental, like the act of God, lightning, earthquake, things of that nature is a natural fire. Fire that's accidental, obviously speaks for itself. A careless cook on a stove, any number of things that can be done accidentally without having intent to do anything wrong. And the other one is an intentional act, an incendiary fire is an intentional act to cause a fire where it's not supposed to be caused.
And only one supports a crime?
Yes.
Would that be an incendiary fire?
Yes.
And given that Mr. Leroy didn't do the fundamental excavation to find the evidence, what level of trust do you put in any of his opinions?
Well, because things weren't done like they need to be done, no matter for what reason, you can't really then opine that you have anything but an unintentional or an undetermined fire. You can't say one way or the other was accidental or incendiary if you don't do the job to finish what you need to do to get that information.
So, in your expert opinion, let's start with the origin, given that you said he didn't adequately consider the chimney chase for one. What trust do you have in his opinion that the living room is the area of origin?
I don't have any, because if the fire started in the chimney chase and then extended to the living room, there's no way of telling the difference because of the destruction of the property. It's too badly burned, and that hypothesis, particularly of the chimney chase, as I say, Mr. Leroy, actually gave a whole page and a half of his definition how it would happen, but he says it couldn't by no other reason.
And now, how would you determine, forget the origin now, going to the cause, what classification is the only one that you could come to given the evidence in this case?
Certainly, if you had no evidence of where the fire actually originated, it would certainly be even more so impossible to determine a cause. You cannot put a label on something that you're saying, well, how? And if you haven't got the answer to the first one, you certainly can't have the answer to the second one.
So that classification would only have to be
Undetermined.
right. Do you place a lot of importance and weight on what classification you're going to give to a fire when you're doing your analysis?
Yes, absolutely.
Why?
Because what you're saying, particularly, well, in any circumstance, if you say the fire is accidental and it might affect another family member, and because you did something stupid, for example, you set up a situation between people that aren't very good, and if you made a wrong determination even for that, you might cause family strife. If you call something incendiary, that is something that's so important to make sure you have the right call, because you alter people's lives, you change people's lives.
Actually, Your Honor, I don't think you can testify to this. This is well outside the scope of expert opinion.
He is an expert, and this is the kind of thing he considers when coming to a determination of a classification, because there are ramifications. That's what he's testifying to.
Thank you. I think the jury understands that. I'm going to sustain the objection.
Let's talk about Mr. Leroy's causation issues with respect to time of day, two able-bodied people, and an abnormally fast fire. We talked about the abnormally fast fire, right?
Yes.
All right. Do you recall Mr. Leroy testifying in the course of this case that the cause of the fire was because of the time of the day and two able-bodied people were in the house, only one survived?
Yes, I recall that.
Can you show us 921, the book?
I can show you 921, but you're not going to find anything like that in the book.
Are you going to find that in any book?
No.
Are you going to find that with any credible source or authority in the fire investigation business?
None.
How about the idea of two able-bodied people? That was the time of day. Two able-bodied people. Do able-bodied people die in accidental fires?
Able-bodied people die in fires, get out of fires, but that is not anything to do with origin and causation of fire.
What is your opinion as to the quality of Mr. Leroy's opinion about that?
Well, he's totally in error, and he never learned that in school. If he did, we need a new school.
Let's talk about this red gas can that was found in the front yard the next day. Have you looked into that idea of somehow could it be related to this fire?
Yes.
I'm going to show you photograph 32 from Mr. Leroy's photographs admitted to one of the prosecution exhibits. You see this picture taken the night of the fire and that red gas can?
I don't know that I have that.
It's up on the screen.
Oh, I guess I don't have to look. Yes.
Okay.
I do recognize there was several pictures like that.
Tell us what impact all this firefighting equipment has on the possible location of that.
Objection, speculation.
No, he's been a firefighter. He knows when to drag hoses around. Thank you.
Well, you can see in the photograph that the gas can is being encircled by hose lines, which are pretty heavy when they've got water in them. They don't just pop up. When you're dragging around, they're dragging whatever might be in that perimeter. And so that gas can, I know, had been moved because.
Your Honor, he can't say he knows it was moved.
There's been no foundation for that response, so unless he lays a foundation, I'll strike the response.
Okay. When you were a firefighter, do hoses stay in one spot or do they move around as you're dragging through the fire?
Firefighters are moving the hose lines wherever they are necessary to try to extinguish the fire. And sometimes you have it in one location, you get the fire that you think controlled there, and you go to another avenue to try to put it out. If you look at the front of that house, there's holes cut by the firefighters to give them access to be able to put water into that house. You'll see it all the way around the house. But so that line is being dragged around all over the place. And with the gas can being right in the middle of it, it's impossible for them not to move it.
Objection, Your Honor.
I'll sustain that objection and strike that response. Jury, don't consider the response, please.
Okay. The next day, Mr. Leroy showed the photograph. And do you recall, do we have that gas can here? Okay. That the spout was broken in two pieces?
Yes,
And the gas can was very muddy?
yes.
All right. Do you recall, or did Mr. Ernst, the MSP analyst testimony, affect your opinion on whether the red gas can had anything to do with this fire?
Yes.
What did you rely on in terms of Mr. Ernst?
Well, there was no liquid gas in that container. It was vapor. He takes and heats this, whatever he has, if it's a metal evidence container or if it's a nylon bag, he heats it up with a heated headspace and takes a syringe and pulls out a headspace and then analyzes it. There was, by his chromatograms and mass spectrometry, as I recall, he said that it was evaporated gasoline up to 85 to 95%. So that also is important.
And do you recall him describing it as the fumes representing old gas?
Yes,
Did that factor in?
yes, that would be the case.
Do you recall what Mr. Leroy admitted as a fire expert as to whether the gas can had anything to do with this case?
He said he could not establish there was any link between the fire and that gas can.
Because there's no evidentiary basis for that?
Yes, correct.
And is that your opinion as well?
Yes,
Do you also recall what he said in turn when I asked him, well, if you were to have that opinion, you'd be speculating? Remember that?
yes, and speculation, well, yes.
Go ahead.
I was going to, speculation is a guess. It has no evidentiary value.
And if you masquerade a guess as an expert opinion, what are you doing in terms of putting out your opinion as an expert?
No objection, Your Honor. I don't think that's a relevant question.
This absolutely ties into what Mr. Leroy admitted.
I think this goes more to argument. Counsel so sustained.
Do you recall Mr. Leroy saying that would be misleading the jury?
Yes, that would be misleading.
And do you recall Mr. Ernst saying that would be misleading the jury?
Yes,
Any opinion that is based on speculation would be misleading the jury?
misleading whoever, the jury in this case.
Okay. Do you have an opinion? Mr. Leroy said that he complied with all the dictates of NFPA 921. Do you have an opinion whether that is true?
That he did,
Yes.
I have an opinion, yes.
What is your opinion to the jury?
My opinion that obviously he did not. We've come up to several different areas. We've explained that he did not follow or, because you claim to have done it, the evidence speaks for itself or the lack of evidence.
He claimed that he complied with all of the dictates of the scientific method, which is required for your business. Do you have an opinion on whether he did that?
Yes.
And what is that opinion?
Opinion he did not. Everything that you've had before you and everything that I've seen as a person following up on this case, there is the fact that he said he did an excavation, and there's photographs from Mr. Shinsky that shows that he did not. The fact
And
that
Mr. Shinsky's admission that he did it.
Oh, yes, that Mr. Shinsky said he did he did the excavation. We saw the heavy equipment out there and other people there helping in that excavation. And then the fact that Mr. Leroy doesn't have any photographs of that excavation, and he has nothing to prove that he had done it and everything to prove that he didn't.
What does that suggest to you about Mr. Leroy's testimony about whether he did it?
Well, he's telling an untruth to you.
At this point, you're asking, going into the province of the jury as far as truth and falsehood.
Do you have an opinion as to whether Mr. Leroy adequately documented anything that he did in terms of collection of data, evidence?
Anything he did? No, he didn't.
And finally, as to any of Mr. Leroy's opinions, what is your level of confidence and trust?
I guess I'm going to object. I think we're starting based on the
No,
process that you're
that's
looking at.
his opinion based as another
I'll allow this
professional.
one more time. My concern is cumulative, but
Okay.
I'll allow you. It sounds like this is the last question on the issue.
Go ahead.
Well, the fact that all these things have been presented to you, I have little or no confidence in his opinion.
Let me finish up a little bit here with, you and I have been doing this work now on this case since the end of 2018 when you met me,
Yes,
right? How many hours do you think you have in this case?
upwards of 2,000.
Okay. And you've testified in criminal cases before
Yes,
on behalf of the prosecution
yes,
and on behalf of the defense?
yes,
And you've testified in civil cases on behalf of insureds, the people who have insurance,
yes,
and on behalf of insurance companies.
yes,
So in every aspect, you've been retained and testified by both sides.
and sometimes third-party cases where it's subrogation, that one company says another company's at fault for causing a fire. Yeah, so that's not either side, I guess.
Okay, let me just take one quick second, I'm going to return to this. Mr. Tranquil, have we covered all the subjects that you wanted to have covered in terms of what you were assigned to do and review?
Yeah, I believe you did.
Okay. In terms of Mr. Leroy's documentation of his work, were you hamstrung in any way?
Well,
Your Honor, I guess I'm going to object. I think you already talked about the adequacy of the documentation, the questions and asked and answered.
That hasn't been asked and answered, Your Honor, I can tell you that.
I'm not clear where you're going with it.
Just what affected the lack of documentation and the inadequate?
I'll allow it.
Thank you.
Overruled.
well, many times, coming after the fact, even, excuse me, when it's been years even, if there's adequate documentation, I could actually make a definitive opinion what may be the cause, either agreeing or not agreeing with the person, but actually coming up with a cause rather than me saying it was undetermined. So that's been the problem in this case.
Okay. But in any situation where you can't rule out different theories or ideas of what could have happened, where it could have started, what is your obligation as a fire expert to call it?
My obligation is to be truthful and call it undetermined. I can't tell.
And in this case, is the area of origin just too big because of the damage?
Objection, asked and answered, Your Honor.
Yeah, I'll
Okay.
sustain the objection.
I don't have any question for you. Thank you, Mr.
All right.
Frankel.
Take get down to the,
Take everything down.
okay, good.
Yep.
Blacksburg
Excuse
Field.
me.
Mr. Blair?
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Good afternoon, Mr. Trinkle.
Good afternoon.
I'd like to kind of circle back to something you said. You indicated you have 2,000 hours into this case, is that correct?
Roughly, yes.
And you're billing for those hours, correct?
My billing is zero,
You're billing zero.
the same as all the other people working in this case.
So ordinarily, sir, you charge $225 per hour, correct?
That was my old fee, now it's $275 for investigative and $350 for court testimony.
I understand. So you're not receiving any compensation at all for your opinion or to come here to testify today, is that
That's correct, the whole crew of us are getting nothing.
Do you expect to receive something later?
No,
So you indicated that you received, you reviewed all the documentation in this case, is that correct?
all that I was provided.
Okay, what were you specifically providing?
Specifically, all the different, they're in the computer, most of my things. It was provided the initial fire report from Lawrence Township. I was provided the initial investigation report by Mr. Leroy. I was provided the report from Mr. Shinsky. All the statements under oath by Ms. Stermer, the information that was on recording by Mr. Shinsky of what Ms. Stermer had to say, photographs, hundreds of photographs from all the responding personnel. In fact, probably most of the reports from, maybe all the reports, but I don't know. I got what I got. But from Maziowski and Ms. Rout and the lab reports, all those kinds of things. Plus, I conduct, well, you said what I was presented. I'm sure there's more.
Okay, fair enough. But my main point I guess I'm going to get to too is you were provided the various statements of Linda Stermer, correct?
Yes,
And you reviewed those statements, correct?
I did.
And those statements, she would be considered, at least at the onset, an eyewitness in this matter, correct?
Yes.
And eyewitness statements, you're allowed to rely upon those according to NFPA 921, correct?
Yes, you do.
And eyewitness statements are relevant, could be relevant in not only determining the area of origin of the fire, correct?
Yes.
And they can also be relevant in determining the cause of the fire. Is that also correct?
Some instances, yes.
And you indicated during your direct testimony that to you an excavation means an archaeological dig, correct?
That's the way it's mostly described, depending on the depth of it. I think I also said that sometimes you don't have an archaeological dig because there's nothing really to dig through, and I think I said something like about a fire in a kitchen stove.
Well, I guess to my point, NFPA 921 does not use the words archaeological dig anywhere in the text, does it?
They do not. Well, I don't think they do.
So when you say archaeological dig, that is your words and your definition, correct?
I would say that's the industry's definition by most people. If you want to try to describe what you're doing, what better way that you could describe it than saying, we have a pile of debris. We know the top part is probably the remains of the roof. The next one is a two-story building, the next floor, and the next floor. But in this particular case, it's the roof.
He's not answering my question.
I think it's,
But
yeah.
I asked very simply, the use of the words archaeological dig, those are your words.
And then I replied, it is the industry's words also. We know by,
Okay, that's good.
okay.
Thank you. And as a matter of fact, NFPA 921 uses the words adequate when it comes, or the word adequate when it comes to excavation. Is that correct?
If you have, yeah, well, it says inadequate, so I guess maybe adequate is something that they may say, but I think adequate could be misinterpreted. But
Fair, because adequate's a subjective term, isn't it correct, sir?
yes,
Or inadequate's a subjective term, correct?
exactly. One way, one the other way, yes.
Right, because if I was a fire investigator and I was reviewing potentially an excavation you did, I could come in and say, your excavation was inadequate, couldn't I?
Probably not behind me.
Well, that's not my question, sir. My question is, as a reviewing cause and origin expert, because of the subjective nature of the term, I could come in behind you and say, you did an inadequate job excavating, correct?
And if you did, you'd have to establish that I actually did an
Your
inadequate
Honor,
job.
can he please answer the question?
All right. It's kind of hard to answer yes or no to that question.
The last one, I think, was possible, so.
Okay.
You may want to limit
Yeah,
your,
could you-
narrow your
could you repeat
questions, Mr. Blair. Yeah, we'll have him repeat.
You would agree with me that as a I was a fire expert. I could come in behind your investigation, your excavation, and I could say it was done inadequately, correct?
I guess you could say that if it was you.
As a matter of fact, in this case, Mr. Leroy did do an excavation, correct?
He did move some things, yes.
Well, you saw the pictures from Mr. Shinsky, correct?
Yes.
Were you present here for his testimony in court?
I don't think I did that. I think I saw that online.
So, would it surprise you to learn that the photograph Mr. Mueller showed you of the back of the Stermer residence with the various piles out back was taken by, you understand it was taken by Mr. Shinsky?
I'm not sure who took it. I know that it was different than, no, go ahead. I don't know who took it.
All right. Well, it was part of a packet of Mr. Shinsky's photos that were shown to you, correct?
I think it was, yes.
And would it surprise you to learn he testified that he took that photograph before he did any excavation?
Yes. No, it wouldn't surprise me. No, not at all. It would not surprise me.
Foundation, I'm not sure what photograph he's talking about.
I asked about the photo of the rear with showing piles of debris.
There are pre and post
I'll
excavation.
overrule the objection as the witness has answered it and
Thank
seems to
you.
understand what he's talking about.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
And so that would then indicate that Mr. Leroy did an excavation of the Stermer residence, correct?
Yes, it was obviously evidence. I could even point out what I think he did dig through, but go ahead.
Okay, but your complaint is just with the adequacy of the excavation, correct?
I guess yes.
You guess yes or yes?
Well, I think I have to describe what I saw that was left that certainly would make it inadequate.
Again, my question, sir, is you take issue with the adequacy of his excavation, correct?
Yes.
You were also shown some photos of after the excavator hired by Mr. Shinsky had begun to remove parts of the residence, correct?
Yes.
And you were testifying, I believe, about how there was debris that was down, would be like in the basement level of the Stermer residence. Do you recall that testimony?
I commented there was debris, yes.
Okay. And you would agree with me that when an excavator is operating and removing things, things are falling into the residence as they're being broken loose by an excavator, correct?
Depending on the quality of the excavator, the excavator people I would hire would not let things fall back into the house.
Well, some of that may be out of their control though, right?
That's why they take painstaking care in how they do what they do when they're not just moving debris around to throw it in a 40-yard dumpster and have it transferred somewhere.
Well, you would agree with me that if I grabbed a hold of a large chunk of, say, roof material or something with an excavator, as I'm lifting that back with an excavator, things might fall off, right?
They might.
You had opinion about the area of origin in this case. Do you recall those opinions?
Yes, they're multiple.
Okay. And you would agree with me that NFPA 921 does not contain any size specification for the area of origin, does it?
There is nothing that says it has to be 6 by, no, there is no, you're right.
So for instance, an 18 by 18 living room could in fact be the area of origin, correct?
You would be correct maybe that it was the area of origin, but if you did nothing to limit that to a smaller area, I just never seen it happen before, I guess.
There's no requirement that you limit it to a smaller area, is there?
There is no requirement that says it, yes.
So this is just, again, your subjective opinion about what should be the area of origin, correct?
If you had a house fire like this, you might as well call the whole house an area of origin, even though we know there was no fire in the east and the south sections, if that's what you're going to say. In the industry
Your Honor,
standards.
I don't think this is responsive to my question.
Sir, why don't you
All right.
restate your question so he can be more
I'm sorry.
responsive? Okay.
Sir, what I'm asking you is, well, I kind of forgot my question, I'm sorry. Yeah, your opinion in this is subjective, that the area of origin must be narrower than the living room, correct?
Yes.
You indicated, I think on direct, that you determined or you believed the area of origin was the chimney chase, is that correct?
I said it may be because I can't isolate that and this living room. And I believe the only reason that Mr. Leroy said it was the living room because he's got gasoline in it. And that limits him from having to worry about that. And he also said that in his testimony.
Well, let's talk about that, sir, because that's interesting. You said you could rely on eyewitness statements, correct?
You decide by the physical evidence if what someone is
That's not
telling.
again, Your Honor.
No,
that's
you
not my
rely on
question.
it,
I
but-
asked him if he could rely on eyewitness statements.
Sir, if you could
In
ask a
part.
question, you can answer yes or no. if
In part.
possible.
In part.
Okay. And you believe the statements of your client, Linda Stermer, correct?
That she was downstairs and
No, I'm not asking you for a recitation, sir. I'm asking you if you believe the statements of your client that you've reviewed.
the man to answer. He's answering the question. You can't cut the witness off.
Re-ask the question.
Thank you. You believe the statements of your client, Linda Stermer, correct?
In part,
In part. Now, you reviewed where she said that she came up the stairs, correct?
yes,
And you reviewed where she described that the fire extended from the master bedroom to the Todd's recliner chair, correct?
that's what she said.
And you reviewed would have been the diagram she would have drawn then in her examination under oath, correct?
I'm not sure about who drew what diagrams, but if she did one under oath, I mean, with Mr. Willison, I probably have reviewed it, but there were other diagrams that were made rough by a lot of people, so I can't really say which ones.
And you also would have read in her statement that she said it wasn't the fireplace, correct?
That's what she said.
And she indicated in her statement that there was no fire anywhere near the fireplace, correct?
That's what she said.
And that's an eyewitness statement, correct?
It's an eyewitness statement that you take at face value sometimes, and sometimes you don't. She's not a fire expert, so she wouldn't know what my thought process might have been.
Witness statements at face value. Let's talk about that since you brought that up. You brought up Mike and Connie Calhoun and Dr. Masali, correct?
Yes,
Now, you were a police officer for a period of time, correct?
I was a fire investigator lieutenant who had police powers. I carried a police badge from the Detroit Fire Department and the Detroit Police Department. I carried 2 badges
And you, so you conducted interviews of witnesses then, correct?
all the time.
All the time. And you would agree with me that witnesses don't necessarily remember all details, correct?
That's one of the reasons you take it. And if it fits the patterns or the things that you know to be true with the physical evidence, that's how you differentiate one from the other.
Because based on your experience as an investigator and interviewing witnesses, sometimes the stress of an event can affect how they perceive things. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yes.
And it can affect the details they might remember, correct?
Yes.
Now let's cycle back to this chimney chase as the area of origin if we can. You indicated, I believe, that a fire would start in the chimney chase from either, I think you said the flue, or possibly an improperly connected chimney pipe. Is that fair? I'm summarizing, I understand.
Yeah, well, if I can explain a little bit.
Sure.
The description given by Mr. Leroy would fit almost exactly in part with what I would say. There is a breach somehow within the connections, or I think he described it as a hole. That could happen too, depending on the material that was being used and eroded through the course of time. Those kinds of things are a potential. I also said on direct, I believe, that there might be insulation too close to. Too close to the chimney chase can cause a fire over time. The fact that something escapes from the flue vent, and it's not that it was improperly, I guess maybe that's why I took exception to the improperly installed. It might have been properly installed, but because buildings shift and move and do things like that, I don't know how well those things were put together with a band to hold them, non-combustible band to the sides, which are combustible. So there's a variety of reasons why, that would happen. And I think Mr. Leroy explained it very well, and he eliminated it because he said it would, wherever it happened, it would go up from that point to the top and burn everything out. Well, you've got a confined space, and heat is convected and radiated in that chamber also, and I know it's a very possible that there was only OSB, from what I understand, on that wall. And so as that's being eroded or destroyed by the fire, it now is weakening the OSB, which is on fire, and that could have fallen into the living room and been the room of origin. Nothing going the other direction shows any sign, and Mr. Leroy very much covered that.
So you, obviously, it sounds like you agree with some of the findings of Scott Leroy, is that
Yes,
correct?
yes, absolutely.
Now, but you only seem to disagree with those that ultimately lead to this being an intentionally set fire.
No, I can't even say it wasn't intentionally set. In fact, I've testified in federal court to say I can't say it was not intentionally set. I said that the way that the investigators said this fire occurred is impossible to have happened. That's what I said.
And you've actually previously testified in this, right?
Yes, I just said in federal court, yes.
And you actually indicated at that time that it didn't look like it was a fireplace malfunction, correct?
At that time, I didn't have aerial photographs, and I didn't have a lot of the other photographs back in 2018 when that took place. 7 years hence, I have a lot more stuff.
What new stuff do you have?
New photographs, more photographs that I didn't have. I mean, they're not new today. They're new from 2018 when I testified. Now they're more new. And I'm not saying it was a chimney fire either. I'm telling you, we agree that there was something substantive in that chimney that needed to be looked at and needed to be eliminated. And my point is, we can't eliminate it.
Well, let me ask you some questions about this.
Sure.
Chimney chases, for lack of a better word, are like a long, tall box that's built around the pipes that go up through the roof. Is that kind of a?
Right. In
layman's way?
modern day times, yes. I think Mr. Leroy also explained how the old chimneys were and all that.
And we're dealing with a modern
Yes,
setup here.
absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. So that's how it's built.
And the purpose of that is also to kind of keep if there is a fire, keep that fire kind of contained in one area. Is that correct?
It's supposed to. In this particular case, however, this chimney chase was built directly in the middle of the house. Most chimney chases are on the outside walls, so that's why I was able to tell causes of these things, because they were severely damaged and the remainder of the house wasn't. So we were able to conduct an examination that was enough to prove what happened. And I think there was a...
Well, you're not, hold on, let me just stop. You're not proving what happened here, correct?
No. I'm just explaining that you're right. It's supposed to be, it is in a confined area, but not, in most cases, there are no fire-resistant materials in the chimney chase.
Fair. Now, as this, according to you, as we're describing this hypothetical chimney chase fire.
Yes.
Materials are going to be actually falling down on top of the fireplace like Mr. Leroy described, correct?
Yes.
And as a matter of fact, then, those are going to start to catch and burn not only the wall studs behind the fireplace, but also the header above the fireplace, correct?
You're speaking of the header that holds the fireplace in place?
Yes.
No, that's pretty well protected. That's on the outside. It's not even anywhere near where the grate and the fire is being propagated and goes up a chimney on an angle. It's called a throat. I had a diagram of one and how it's assembled. So, well, go ahead.
Let me ask it this way. Maybe I'm not being clear in my question. You saw the photograph that was up on the screen that was put up on one of Mr. Leroy's photographs showing the fireplace, correct? The first floor fireplace.
Yes.
And it had a wood header that went all the way around it, correct?
Header goes just above it.
Above it, I'm sorry. And there was framing around it as well still, correct?
I don't remember if I saw framing around the fireplace. I did see vertical studs going above the header.
And those are part of the chimney chase, correct?
They are.
And if a fire started in the chimney chase, the fire would then burn all of the fuel in that area, correct?
If it was not extinguished first, yes.
And we don't have it all burned in that area then, do we, sir?
We have a lot of damage, yes. By the fall down, there is certainly a lot of burning, but it did not consume what you're talking about.
So that would be an indicator then that it did not start in the chimney chase.
No, that header is on the outside. You're not looking at the interior, what was exposed eventually by the fire in the chimney chase or wherever in the building, forgetting where it was a chimney chase or not. That header was protected. You have everything else in that room, first floor and second floor level, burned to a great degree. Much mass loss, as it was described by Mr. Leroy, not about the chimney chase, but about how we describe things. Mass loss is the new word to say all the time rather than heavily charred. But in losing, okay, so what I'm saying is that particular board isn't burned and everything else is because it was protected.
Well, let me ask this, because it runs along the top of the fireplace, correct?
On the outside, yes. I mean, it's the outside base of what you're talking about to hold it together.
Can I pull up my picture?
Yeah, it's pretty empty here. You're so thoughtful.
This photo right here, sir, this is People's Exhibit 34-19. You've seen this before?
I'm sure I have, yes.
Okay, and that's the fireplace we're talking about, right?
Yes,
And that runs directly along the top of the fireplace, correct, that header?
just like we said, yes.
Yep. And there's a backside to that board, correct?
Yes.
And that would have burned, correct? If fire had fallen on top of that fireplace?
You don't think the backside's burned?
I don't know, you're asking me a question, sir.
I am, because you're asking me, and you're showing a picture showing the front, and certainly, I think I've seen aerial views that show that backside heavily charred.
But it's not burned all the way through, is it?
It's a pretty slick piece of wood, and it's not burned all the way through, correct?
Because if fire was burning in the chimney chase, when it lands on top of that fireplace, it's going to burn all the way through that board, isn't it?
No. It could, but normally, no. The fire's happening above, and you look at what the damage is above there, where OSB wood is no longer and that would have fallen into the living room. That's the living room side.
But
This
the
side,
burning debris within the chimney chase would have fallen on top of that fireplace, correct?
some would for sure.
And then it would have ignited that board, correct?
Probably not. It did ignite if you look on the opposite side. If we show the opposite side, that board is heavily charred.
What I'm trying to get to is, sir, that board would have completely burned then.
And I would say you're absolutely wrong.
Oh, okay.
It might, but not in this condition.
You were asked about, a little bit about gasoline, so I'll ask you the same question. And just so we lay a proper foundation, the vapors of gasoline are what burn, correct?
Correct.
And you would agree with me that if I were to, for instance, even in this room, pour gasoline here on the floor possibly, and put a candle over there, that those vapors could ignite, correct?
If the vapors got as high as the candle's flame, yes.
Okay. And in this case, we have a fireplace that's fairly close to ground level, fair?
Fairly close. You see that there's a bottom framing of that. So I mean, I can't tell from the picture, but 6 inches to 12 inches maybe. I could be wrong, but that's what it looks like to me.
And it is possible, is it not, to deposit an accelerant in a room, leave an open source of flame in a room, and leave that room, and the fire still ignite, correct?
You're asking me a hypothetical, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, because I'm going to tell you about it depends, but yes, it could, depending.
And there are factors that depend on that, but it could happen, correct?
Could happen, but it depends.
Understand. It depends on probably only, yes, the amount of gasoline and the type of ignition source, various factors, correct?
The-
I'm just going to object here. We're asking questions, giving hypotheticals that have no basis in the evidence in this case, zero. And it has to be based on evidence in the case.
I think it is, and I'll overrule.
Okay. So, wait for a question.
Did you get, do you know?
I think he answered the
said
question,
depends.
yeah.
He said yes, depends, so.
Yeah, you did, and that's fine.
Okay.
And you heard, and we already kind of went over this, Ms. Stermer's statements about the fire going from Todd's recliner to the master bedroom, correct?
I don't know if she said it was going, and that was the depth and breadth of the fire, I guess. When you say going, it seems like you're suggesting it went from here to there.
That is what I'm at. The fire, she described a trail of fire going from the master bedroom or to his recliner or vice versa.
I guess I still don't understand. Are you saying she saw this trail here and then go there, 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 or just saw this?
Just
wide-
saw a one
saw-
continuous trail. How's
yeah,
that?
Wide range, yes.
Yes. In your expert opinion, that could be an accelerant trail, could it not?
Oh, I don't think anything she described would have been anything like a trail, unless, as I said, if you were telling me you saw it go from here to here to here, that would be a trailer. But if you see an immense amount of fire going from a chair and including your husband in a wall, that doesn't tell me anything, except there was a fire in a wide area.
Let's talk about your the first video of the burning of the storage room. Is that right?
Yes, it was a storage room for a party store.
And that was actually a fire designed to replicate a other fire you were investigating.
Yes,
And we saw lots of cardboard boxes in that video. Is that correct?
yes,
And they were started on the floor, correct?
yes,
And then they were actually stacked up to the ceiling, correct? Or close.
Close,
to the,
close, yes.
Close to the ceiling.
Yes.
Fair. And then there was also a shelf along the ceiling with more cardboard boxes on there, correct?
yes, they were, yeah, just yes.
And that fire, those cardboard boxes are fuel, correct?
Yes,
And would you agree with me, and I understand this is a layman's way to describe it, but cardboard boxes are fairly easy to set on fire.
I was going to give you an example of what was on the top. They are not easily ignitable up on top. And cardboard, it all depends, I guess, again, but those cardboard boxes, you saw how long it took for the sides to burn and how long it took them to actually become involved in the fire. So they will readily ignite, but not in a fast format or the way they, I don't know what the word I want to use. But on the top, they're old, long neck boxes that carried 24 bottles of beer. They don't ignite very easily. They're very strong. They're more dense. They're more pressed together.
Well, you would agree with me, obviously, that the cardboard burns much easier than, say, like a log of wood.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And that fuel load that you created in that room was designed to direct the fire up to the ceiling, correct?
No, it was to simulate the conditions that were told me by the owner, and this was the third fire we did. We built that building 3 times because we believed this guy, but the evidence didn't look like, I mean, if we just took it at face value, we'd have said the guy set the fire. The third one came out almost identical to what he saw, like what Ms. Stermer may have seen, and how that fire progressed before the fire department arrived. That's what I was trying to do. I was trying to simulate and see if we could create something that made sense to us by what he told us. And he told us what the cardboard boxes were, he told us what was in the cardboard boxes, and how he'd stacked them, and that's why we did it that way.
And you said these were 8-foot ceilings, correct?
Yes.
And at the very beginning of the video, it looks like there's a fire started in the cardboard box. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
What was used to start that?
A match.
A match. Any accelerant used?
No.
You would agree with me that accelerant could have increased the speed of that fire, correct?
In the incipient stages. You know, there's stages of fire under normal conditions. Nothing's normal when it's hostile, but say you light a fire in a fireplace, you're doing whatever you need to stack the wood up in a configuration, put paper under it to make it burn quickly. What happens with gasoline and fuels like that, I don't like the term ignitable liquids because you just told me earlier, liquids don't burn. I was against that, and I tried to not get it to happen in NFPA 921. I like flammable, combustible, things that are defined by my background. But going back to what you're saying, yes, in the initial stages, that would have not just gone slowly, it would have blared up or flowed up quite quickly.
A sudden fire, correct?
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
And going back to the chimney fire, those fires generally tend to start slowly and build, correct?
Yes, you have to pyrolyze the wood that is, I shouldn't use that word, but you've got to take the liquid out of a solid to make it gas, to make it burn. And when you do that, it takes time. When you only got a small, say, not a spark, but a small ember that comes out, it takes time. And over time, some of that wood becomes more susceptible to ignition. That's, I guess, what a better way of saying it.
Sure. And like the old adage goes, there's usually, if there's smoke, there's fire. So we expect smoke before the fire, correct?
In most instances, yes.
And in a chimney fire, we would have, it would have been expected that there would have been some smoke before this erupts into a blaze, correct?
It would be correct, but the smoke would be going up and through the chimney, up through the chase.
Well, you understand that this wasn't 100% complete construction, correct?
I do.
And so high likelihood there maybe were some cracks or some seams, correct?
Yes.
And so smoke could have escaped from those, correct?
Supposedly, there was OSB, which is 1/2 inch thick, 5/8 inch thick, and it's porous, but it's stuck together. It's chipped wood and stuff held together by glue.
Well, and I guess what I'm trying to get at here, if I can, is you were asked questions about there being 2 able-bodied persons in the residence, correct?
Yes.
And that this was, the time of day was about 3:30 in the afternoon, correct? Maybe a little before?
Yeah, 3:30, I think, was a fire call.
Fair. And you would agree with me then that if a person, that is not necessarily a factor for the cause of the fire, but is something that should be considered by a fire investigator, the idea that there are 2 able-bodied persons in the home and the time of day, correct?
Yes, it's good to know, but it doesn't give you any evidence of a fire origin or a fire cause unless those people told you that, and Ms. Stermer was the only one who said she saw this fire in that location. So that would be the only person. But the first call at 3:30 or 3:31, the guy said the fire's coming out behind the chimney.
Well, but what I'm trying to get at here, sir, is if this is a chimney fire is a slow starting fire, correct?
Correct.
And there's going to be smoke, correct?
And smoke and heat rise, yes.
You would expect then an able-bodied person in the home, especially during the daylight hours, to notice that, correct?
You're-
Foundation, he's the one who's been making objections all morning yesterday, that how he
What's
would
the
expect
objection?
someone else-
Objection is foundation?
Yes.
Okay, response?
I think as a fire expert and investigating all these fires he's talked about, I think he can opinion on this.
Okay, well, I guess I can give an explanation like a hot air balloon. It goes up because there's heat in the balloon to go up. Heat and smoke rise. There had a fireplace, or I had a fire in that chimney, which obviously is emitting smoke also, and that heat and smoke is going to rise. So unless those people were outside, they were only going to see it coming through the chimney flue, or what they thought was a chimney flue. It wouldn't be coming into the house.
But as the fire debris begins to fall down with inside the chimney chase, they're going to notice it then, wouldn't they?
Chimney chase is still enclosed as far as the fireplace hearth is all enclosed. So there's going to be no indication of that until the fire breaks through that wall. And I'm saying, based on our hypotheses between us, where it started is where it's going to be, the most damage is going to go up from there. But that location is going to be where that wall is breached and other things are coming down at the same time that's being breached.
There's actually a sound that's associated with chimney fires, isn't that correct?
Crackling sound of fire, they got a fire in the fireplace. There could be a sound, there's going to be a sound, but whether you detect it or not, I don't know.
Now, one other thing I wanted to point out, I'm going to circle back, I guess, to your video. I keep finding different avenues as I ask questions, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Your video, the first one of the storage unit.
Yes.
That fire, you would agree with me, doesn't spread to the surrounding boxes for about 2.5 minutes, correct?
That's probably, yeah, about right. I mean, we both would watch the time and know for sure, but yeah, somewhere in that general time, it was not that quick and it wasn't that slow.
Were you actually inside the building?
Yes.
Okay, was that you filming?
No, my son was filming with another firefighter. These both were Detroit firefighters. They're both retired chiefs now. I'm getting old.
Fair. So what I'm getting to is, you could have escaped that fire if you had to, correct?
Yes,
And would have escaped without injury, correct?
yes, unless I would have stayed where you saw the film kind of being jingling around. That's when the heat was too hot for those guys who even had fire gear on.
But of course, for that to have happened, you would have had to have sat there and watched this fire overtake you in the matter of 3 minutes or so, is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, if you were able-bodied, you should be getting out.
And you were asked questions about gasoline in the area of origin, correct?
Yes,
And we know Todd Stermer had gasoline on his sweatpants, correct?
we know there was analysis from the chemist that said it was 85 to 95% evaporated gas.
Objection, Your Honor. I don't think the chemist ever said that about the sweatpants. Fair. But again, you indicated let's just go this way. There was gasoline on sweatpants, correct?
There was residue of vapors of gasoline. When you say gasoline, I think of liquid, but there was no liquid on this
Fair.
pants.
You don't know how much gasoline was ever on those sweatpants, correct?
No,
So when you say, when you throw 2 ounces on a pair of cutoff sweatpants on a video, you have no idea, that has no way bearing comparison on how much gasoline was on Mr. Stermer's sweatpants, correct?
In jury instruction, it was never intended to demonstrate that. He knows that.
I think that could be misleading, so I'll have you move on.
Fair. Let's talk about the sweatpants you have as an exemplar and the ones in the video. Those are those the same sweatpants you have there that were on that video?
yes.
Where
We
were they
bought 3 pair, and I preserved one, the gray one we burned, that was gray, I think, too. And the reason they were cut off is I did probably 20 other different kinds of demonstrations with them that we didn't admit.
And those are not the same sweatpants that are that were on Mr. Stermer, correct?
Same objection, Your Honor. This is misleading. We have a jury instruction, and he knows that.
I think this is perfectly relevant, Your Honor.
I'll allow it.
They're not the same.
They're not, they're not the same manufacturer, correct?
I don't know, no, they can't be, well, I shouldn't say they can't be. One was made in Vietnam, and the other one was made in China. These were made in China. Stermers were made in Vietnam.
And you can't tell us they're the same thickness, correct?
I guess we could compare them.
No, I'm asking you, as part of
Oh,
your
as part- right
experiment,
now-
you didn't verify they're the same thickness, correct?
Well, I didn't have possession and never did have possession. I looked at the things with Mr. Zerzine.
But you had an opportunity to examine those sweatpants, correct?
I was able to examine them, and the attorney would not let me do one thing I wanted to do because she's saying it changed
Objection.
the evidence. Well,
Talking hearsay, so I'll have you stop.
I'm the one that's.
Pardon?
I'm the one that was there doing it.
Okay, thank you, but I'll have you stop here.
Okay,
now.
all right.
Thank you. You can't verify that they're the same weave, correct?
I can't.
And as a matter of fact, when it comes to polyester materials, there are actually different chemical makeups of polyester, correct?
The word poly probably says it.
So when it comes to 100% polyester, some may be different. One pair of 100% polyester sweatpants may be different from a different pair of 100% polyester sweatpants, correct?
Yes, yes.
And as far as affecting how things burn, you conducted that test out in the open, correct?
Correct.
They were not on a human analog such as commonly used are pigs,
Nope,
and they were open to the air, correct?
they were.
And there was a breeze blowing actually that day, correct?
There was.
You can, and that also feeds into a fire, correct?
Usually, yes.
So the level of oxygen is important here, correct?
I don't think there was a deficiency of oxygen where Mr. Stermer was and/or in this fire, so I don't see the difference, but the oxygen is present.
I'm just going to renew the objection. He's talking about now differences in ventilation versus the test. It wasn't to recreate anything, it was to illustrate principles. These things now getting into trying to compare circumstances.
I get your point, but I think it's relevant to the purpose that we stated to this jury as for the offering of the polyester, so I'm going to allow it.
Thank you. And again, these were out in the open, correct?
Yes,
They were not on a person, correct?
Correct?
And you would agree with me that if they're on a person, that could affect the level of oxygen that they're exposed to, correct?
If they're being exposed to more oxygen, interior and exterior, you're correct.
And as a matter of fact, that completely discounts any human interaction with the pants, correct?
Correct?
Because a human, if, for instance, lit on fire, might try to put that out with their hands, correct?
That would not be a bad idea.
So
Yeah,
as a matter
correct.
of fact, I guess what I'm trying to get at is, your experiment, we'll call it, was done under the most ideal of conditions, correct?
No, I don't see it that way.
But it didn't take into account multiple variables that could be, that you needed to consider in this case, correct?
No.
You talked about Mr. Matheny's clothes, correct? You remember that?
Yes,
In transference, correct?
yes.
And you were present for the testimony of Troy Ernst?
I think I was, I heard it, think I was on video too. I mean, not video, YouTube at the same time.
And you indicate, and you heard him testify that on the shirt of Mr. Matheny is where the lighter elements of gasoline were present, correct?
If the lighter elements of gasoline were present, I think you're misspeaking, but I can tell you then he would have the most. The gasoline would be most on his shirt.
Well, no, okay. You're not a chemist, correct?
Nope. I'm
You're not a forensic scientist in the aspect of chemical analysis, correct?
No, but I understand lighter and medium and heavy. And when you say lighter, that has more gasoline still residue left than the other way around. I think you just misspoke, but it's okay.
All right, fair enough. What I'm trying to get at is you heard him say that it was more likely that the gasoline was transferred from the sweatpants, socks, and underwear of Todd Stermer to the shirt than vice versa.
I did
correct?
hear that, yes.
All right. Oh, I was gonna say I was skipping this.
And please remember not to discuss the case with anyone, no social media, no research or investigation or media.
All right, so that is the morning part done. Wow, that was amazing. We were able to do zoom, zoom, zoom. Yeah, YouTube fire. That's hilarious. I mean, it depends on which feed you was watching, but probably yeah. I don't know how I feel about this guy's testimony so far. They are so at each other's throats that honestly I don't know how to take it. It's just so weird. Just let's see if they have anything to do.
Counsel, the jury's left. Any matters to address in our break?
No, Your Honor.
Anything, Mr. Mueller or Mr. Kelly? Okay, we'll be in recess.
So yeah, so court is now went for a break. Their time they're gonna be back in about an hour, but we are gonna be starting Lori Vallow exactly in about an hour. I just find it interesting that this, like, I might need to have to go back and have a listen because he was saying he was not getting paid. Who works for free? I certainly don't work for free. I obviously no one in their right mind, right, would work for free. So I just don't understand that. Who can? Yeah, none. No one works for free. So I just don't know. It's weird. So I'm just. Like I don't imagine that. I cannot see that happening. All of them being pro bono, and nah, she's paying. I'm sure 100% she's paying somehow, and he was lying because no one. A fair trial, yeah, but still, it's not. Things are not for free. People don't work for free. He did not spend time setting things on fire and everything, and just and then not expect a payment. Like, I don't know. That is just a bit bit weird for me. Sorry. Of course, I'm yawning. Cause it's just weird. I don't know. It just seems a little bit too weird. That they he was saying that he's not getting paid. So it's just seems fishy. But I hear that the BK hearing is actually going very spicy as well. Well, probably. I mean, it's been more than 18 years or something. That almost, yeah, 18 years. Is the policy still like still on? I don't think so. Do you think so? Here, fishy, fishy, fishy. Okay, Swan, that is hilarious. I don't know. It's like, do you think that if she's found not guilty, she will get her policy back? The money. That is just just so weird. And it's just, oh, I don't know. It's I don't know. It's fishy again. Oh, really? Oh, wow. So she does have like even a lot to write on this, indeed, because otherwise, yeah, so she can get a life insurance. So, well, yeah, but then that goes to motive that she can literally do her new life without Todd, have the insurance money and just walk away with it. I don't think she's gonna walk away. It's my opinion that it they not, yeah. So 400K, I think it was around that. Yeah, I think you are right, Zizi. I think it was, sorry, I think it was around that. That the home was insured and everything, but um I think there was life insurance, but I'm not sure the amount. I think I was 90K or something, I think I heard. But I mean, but would she need to pay her debts? Like, all those debts that she had back in the day with, the horses and loans and everything else. Will she want to have, like, she's gonna have to pay that? Um, oh yeah, there's a lot of to full motive. It's motive that she didn't want to start anymore. She wanted the affair that she was having at the time. She didn't want, I thought, probably nagging her about the horses, and yeah, she just got sick of it. So, yeah, that's what I think. I don't know. I mean, we'll see. But we've been surprised so many times, as of late. Two phones, side boy. Exactly. That's indeed. Yeah, she did have two phones, a side boy. She knew that by getting the money from the insurance, if of like the life insurance or home insurance or whatever, she could pay all of her debts and probably still have some money aside. She was exactly, and the debt that she was in, they were in. So it's complicated. It is definitely complicated, and a lot of craziness indeed. But again, like I was just saying, we have had a lot of craziness in terms of verdicts in the last couple of trials that we've been following. So I am not putting my what do you say, my apples in the same basket, everything in the same basket, just yet. I'm still gonna want to listen. Maybe closings will be a good like explanation if the defense attorneys don't talk too much about what it's not necessary like they like to do. Then they can just solidify that the indeed eggs, that's it. Why did I say apples? Am I trying to be healthy or something? Love, me trying to be healthy and saying how apples. Well, yeah, they all did break for sure. Um, Eggs. I know we're talking about a very expensive something. Eggs. Well, for you guys, sorry. Here is not. Huevos, indeed. Yes, well done, Zizzy. Yes, huevos. Yeah, so that is the morning part of the Linda Stermer case. We were able to do the afternoon of yesterday plus the morning of today, which is good. So tomorrow, or like, I'm gonna I'm trying to reach our friends Zio, Hio, and Robert because they are going to be covering tonight until lunchtime in Arizona. Until the afternoon part starts. Zio and Robert are going to be covering the stream because it's Wednesday. I do have my commitment, even though I am knackered. I still want to go and be at my commitment thing. So I am trying to get in touch with Zio and Robert to make sure that they can still do it and they'll be okay. But whoever is going to be there's going to be a live there's a live we are going to be doing Lori no matter what happens. So either me or one of the girls are going to be doing and I appreciate you guys, but I think we're going to leave this stream here. I'm going to redirect everybody to the Lori Vallo stream. I'll see you there, and then we're going to go from there, but I will be back. If they do it, I'll be back about afternoon time for Lori, and then yeah. Oh, thank you very much. I will definitely have fun. It's gonna be, I need to go nap before my commitment as well because I definitely need a nap. But we're gonna be automatically redirect to the Lori Valor stream, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.
And I'm a real-time crime professional.